gonna get water?
I am. You want
Yeah, I'll
one?
take one.
When did you get this? When did you get this? Oh, when?
He just now passed it out.
Good evening, and welcome to the Fort Smith City Board of Directors study session on this August 26th of 2025. These meetings are being televised live for the benefit of the residents who cannot be with us in person today. With that, we will go to the first item on the agenda. Mr. Dingman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item this evening is review of departmental service objectives for 2026. All of the departments submitted departmental service objectives to the Finance Department in preparation of the 2026 budget cycle. I'll turn this to Andy Richards to go through what was reported.
Okay, so, man, I don't have a lot to add to that. This is our annual process. Budget season has started across all the departments, and definitely in the finance department. One of the first steps here is we have collected from all the different departments the service objectives for 2026, as well as their KPI measurements and outcomes from their 2025 service objectives. Now, this was done, these were compiled and put together within the last couple of weeks, and then you had your strategic session Friday. So, if there's anything that needs to be implemented from that outcome, I mean, we can definitely modify that as we go through the budget process. But I'll stand for any discussion or questions you have and answer them the best I can.
Okay, thank you very much. This time we will go to the board. Director Rigo, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have a variety of questions across a few different departments that I would, hope the department head, if they're here, would be able to speak to. There's kind of some clarifying questions based on the stuff that was written down here. Is that all right?
Yes, you may proceed. Go ahead.
Well, the first ones are in city administration. That's the first section there in the packet. And on page 6, there's a couple things, Jeff, talking about a service objective being identifying a solution for funding mechanisms to facilitate capital improvements for water treatment and transmission infrastructure. And you mentioned in the paragraph underneath there that, there was a suggestion around a rate increase providing capital funds that was not implemented, of course. So, and then it says here, and I assume you wrote this, no funding mechanism for these water projects exists, which I'm not disputing that characterization. But when you say that a main service objection is trying to identify those funding mechanisms, I mean, what do you have in mind? What are you eyeballing?
Well, I mean, in terms of, more appropriately, I would say no funding mechanism has been determined, I guess, instead of exists. I mean, it certainly does exist, and I think that it is going to be a discussion that revisits water rates to some degree, and any other funding that we can identify that can go towards those projects, and I don't know what that is currently. And so I just needed to mention it here because that needs to be something that we, particularly as we get through, hopefully, the modification of the consent decree, we get those projects bonded and underway and moving. The next focus, the next main focus that we need to do is turn our attention to the water projects and how we intend to pay for those improvements that are needed. And that's the I was trying to relay here.
Okay. I think Director Martin had thoughts on this item as well.
I have a question on city administrator, so when you're done.
And that just had one other one under item 3. You talked, Jeff, about continuing to identify efficiency of city service delivery and facilities management. Administration intends to reorganize and right-size city staff. Talk a little bit for us about what right-sizing means to you, because you talked about, obviously, the natural attrition of, retirements or people stepping away, perhaps vacancies not being filled. But you also talk about reducing operating costs and ensuring that the city organization is not too big. So I guess I'm looking for some definitional structure from you about what right sizing looks like and what your definition of too big. is.
Right, and as far as too big, I don't know. But what it is, what I do know is that we have passed, in 2025, we passed a budget that had an operational deficit. And, you know, we're starting the process for 2026, and we're looking at, well, what things are going to change as we look at a 2026 budget in order to make adjustments to live within. I mean, the board has emphasized to me and others on staff, and Andy and I have agreed, and we've talked administratively, is how are we going to put forth a 2026 budget that meets these goals that the board has relayed to me in terms of not passing an operating deficit. Well, there are many ways to do that, but we've also talked about other needs that the departments have, equipment related and things like that. And we talked some the other day about, we recognize that there are a lot of needs. We recognize that there is a finite amount of dollars to this, and if we're going to start meeting some of those needs in terms of equipment, well, then other things need to give. We have financial policies in place. This, if we're going to budget anything that starts putting our reserve fund at less than 25%, then we're not supposed to consider capital in addition of capital. If it gets, I think, below 20%, we're supposed to start talking about reducing the staff sizes. And so that is really where we're getting to. If we're looking at, do we have too many people on staff? Do we have too many budgeted positions? Can we afford to allow vacant positions to expire or go away or be removed from our budgeted list? And that's where we start talking. Do we have, I think 1,100 or so, 1,121 in terms of budgeted full-time positions? Is that too many for a town our size with the revenues that we have and the things that we need to accomplish with our budgets?
Okay, and then the last thing I had in there was a couple sentences later, you say, for 2026, administration prefers to pull back new initiatives. What new initiatives would you like to see pulled back?
Well, in terms, not specific new initiatives, but anything in addition to what we're trying to do. I think there is this is my impression of staff, is that we feel like we have a lot of things that we're trying to catch up on or finish before we start into something new. And my impression with these sentences, this phrase, is to say, we need to focus on the things that we're currently doing, finish those, get those in a good place before we then try to go on with something new. Because I think that goes hand in hand with some of the comments I just made in terms of staff has a finite amount of time. We have finite amount of resources to dedicate to doing projects. We need to do the ones that we are doing and do them well before embarking on something new. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean if there's a new board objective or a new direction from the board or the residents, frankly, that says we need to do another particular thing, we certainly will give a look at that. But in terms of trying to find new things, we need to focus on finishing the things that we've already started and getting those in a good place before we then try to embark on something new.
Thanks.
Director Kemp.
Yeah, just a conversation with Director Rigo. Do you ask those questions because you have a differing opinion on them, or do you ask those questions just for further clarification?
I think that it's more in the line of clarification in the sense that we are, trying to start, we're starting this budgetary process. We, as we discussed on Friday, are perhaps trying to feed inputs into it differently or more specifically on the front end. And so I was just looking for some, clarification on those things. And I would say in all of these processes, we're going to reach a point where the general must become specific. And so the sooner that we get to specifics, the easier it is to begin to allocate the resource.
I appreciate your last statement there, because I think the statements in the memo I agree with, and every point that you're asking about I actually agree with that Jeff has made in the statement. But I do appreciate what you're talking about. At some point, the general statement has to become specific. I don't know if we're there yet, or when we get there. We get a budget in October, but I think the budget in October ought to reflect what we're reading in this, and that we who are not in the day-to-day need to know the standpoint of the professionals, which department has these job postings that have been vacant for a long time, and if we were to not fill those spots, the dollars it brings in and the transparency of it, I think for me those outcomes are great, and I just was wanting to make sure I was questioning kind of our drive and focus of it. I like what I'm hearing, but I do want specifics, but I definitely don't want to go a different direction. Thank you.
Director Neil Martin.
Yeah, so I think what Director Rigo and Director Kemp talked about is kind of what I'm hitting on. One of the things that I saw as I went through here, I did see a lot of generalities. I did see a lot of non-objective objectives. So, for instance, specifically around city administrator, facilitate discussion around housing, homelessness, and struggles of homeless individuals in the city. What's the outcome? I mean, to me, that's not really, that's just saying we're going to do something. I don't see any actionable items associated with it. When I'm looking at some of these objectives, and you go through here and you look at police, it was massive. But then you look at other departments, there's not much there. And it doesn't mean it has to be massive. But if you look at police, you saw specificity in there. Reduce something by X percent. That's what I want to see. This doesn't really tell me anything. We had you could have solved that in one meeting, and not to say that we had one meeting, but what I'm getting at here is there needs to be some specificity around these objectives that drive us forward in something. So we could have been reducing homelessness, the point in time count by X. I know that we don't control all of that, but on all these service objectives across the board, we need that specificity. Like we are actually, there's some measurement associated with it. And like with the homelessness was here, I mean, I see some other things going on, but I don't necessarily see what we accomplished here. And so that's what I want to see. I mean, I've got a number of other items here that I want to hit on, and I don't want to go too long in terms of what we got. But because we're here and because of the comments that were just made, I want across the board these to be more specific and have some either percentages, decreases by X amount, increases by X amount, whatever, in these service objectives as we move forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Rigo, you may continue. Go ahead.
Mayor, I was just wondering if from a format standpoint, because I have questions not on every department, but a number of departments or comments, and I'm sure it sounds like Director Martin does too. Would it be possible to just go through sequentially through the agenda item and just stop at each department and say, hey, does anybody have any comments or questions?
That's certainly an option, or you could address the items that you have. Either way. So you want to go department by department?
I think, I mean, that certainly would be good. I mean, if nobody has a comment on department, we'd go through it pretty quickly, and then that way we're not skipping any, or we're not, okay. I'm not jumping ahead to one and somebody's backtracked to a different comment.
Okay, why don't we just do that? Okay. Okay. And what department are we going to, is up next? Courts. Okay. Any comments on the courts? Okay. Okay. Internal audit.
I don't think anything was provided for internal audit, right? Go ahead.
I mean, there is a list. My only thought was I think we should ask our new internal audit director when they get started to participate in this process, to look at what's on the page here, see what she might like to change or have differently. But I don't know what the rest of y'all think.
I would 100% agree. I think 2025, there wasn't any answers given to 25. Obviously, we didn't have a director, so.
Okay, thank you. What's the next department you have?
Human resources.
Human resources. Okay.
Yeah, I had some issues with HR and maybe specifically the 2025. And I know that we've got new leadership there, but conduct at least 12 stay interviews, conduct at least 10 exit interviews. My expectation is we're doing that. We're doing exit interviews on everybody. Is that a true statement? Like that to me does not seem like an objective. Like that should be kind of normal course of.
So yes, that's why if you look at the 2026 objectives, I overhauled everything that we were doing, because in 25, to your point, the objectives that were in place were more measurement based, that tied back to the KPIs, as opposed to true objectives.
Okay.
And so that's why if you look at 26, those things are not in there anymore, and it's more truly future focused on these are things that we're going to work toward and try and get taken care of.
Okay, and remember, like I mentioned earlier, and some mentioned as well, we'll get specificity around some of these growth decreases, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for HR?
Yeah. So turnover remains above 17%. What is our strategy to maybe reach a lower voluntary turnover target?
I mean, that is definitely something that we measure and we look at and use metrics from the Department of Labor to see where we're at. That's definitely something that we could look at and I can take to heart for 26 and look at. You know.
Well, the partnership with Peak Innovation Center, does that translate into some actual new hires for us?
I hope for it too, yes. That's a program that just started here in the last couple of years. You may be familiar with the program through the chamber that they do to try and place high school seniors that are not college bound and not trade bound to bring them to work, because we do have a large contingent of employees that don't need a degree for what they do. And so that's why I see that as a benefit to help address some of the staffing needs that we have and find those 18, 22-year-olds that are entering the workforce and try and get them, coming straight out of school, put them to work.
I love that. Thank you.
Okay. Director Neil Martin.
And one other thing I wanted to add, one of my problems with HR in general is, and not necessarily here, but just HR in general, is a lot of times in their recruitment efforts, it's just, I'm going to put a posting out on a website and expect that people are going to come to me, rather than the HR teams, again, not saying you guys do this, but HR in general, going to career fairs, going to recruit people and recruit the best people possible for a certain position. So I'd like to see that, some kind of measurement of that, and how some of those efforts translate into new hires. Obviously, we're trying to be an employer of choice. So I want us to be able to be doing that on the HR side, like showing why we're the employer of choice, and recruiting people in specifically like we're doing with Peak on the high school folks, but also the folks that have been in professions for a while.
And we do that. We do participate in employer fairs, in job fairs. We actually have one coming up at the University of Arkansas that actually Ben Martz is going to help us with.
UAFS or University of Arkansas?
UA Fayetteville.
Okay.
For engineers specifically.
Okay, good.
And so, we do participate in those. We're going to continue to participate in those. And so this is not to say this is all we're going to do.
Right.
This is a divergence from what we have done traditionally, going back to the comparison of 25 to 26. But this gives us an opportunity to say, okay, where have we been lacking in? That's why I see these objectives is where have we been lacking in organizationally as an HR department, and what things do we need to work toward for the future? Whether those are definitively measurable, or we're going to work to, obtain more students, but I couldn't tell you what a fixed number of people would be that we would try and reach out of a program with Peak, because we've never done that.
Well, with our work of our HR team, we can significantly improve and address deficiencies in staffing. And so that's what I look to you guys to do. Don't just wait for people to come to us. We got to go to them.
No, when we have job postings out, for example, the one that's going to come up next week, the ones that we've been doing, we don't just post it on the website and sit back and wait.
Good.
We do post it out to other ancillary sites, through LinkedIn, through other places. Now, some of those do cost money. And so there's dollars associated with that, and so it's up to the department if they want to allocate those resources to expand those recruitment sources. But there are other no cost or low cost ones through UAFS to push out positions when we have those through the school.
I want to see HR out actively recruiting there. So
sure, I do too, and that's what we're wanting to do here. Not only for the college side, but for the high school side of it too. To cover both bases, an engineer as well as an equipment operator.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions for HR? Okay, thank you, sir.
The city clerk's office is next, if anyone has questions for the clerk.
Okay. Who's next?
Purchasing is next, and Andy can answer those questions for purchasing.
Purchasing. Any questions for purchasing? Okay.
Next is information technology services.
I would like some additional information on those outcomes, or additional information for the outcomes on IT. I can't find it here in my packet, but
James is approaching.
James is coming.
What page is that on? 28?
27 and 28, yes, sir.
So
okay, go ahead, sir.
there wasn't necessarily anything that I wanted to necessarily talk about, but it's just on the 25 objectives, just maybe a little more detail on some of those things that we've done. Not saying we have to talk about it now, but that's kind of what I was looking for. When you say like objective 2, we have continually assessed the state of physical and information security systems. Maybe provide a little more details what that is, as much as you can share publicly.
Right. That is, as you know, sir, that is the difficulty. We can talk a little bit about some of the staff training that we do, tightening up the firewalls, having our EDR solution. But again, we don't want to go too specific on some of them. But we'll definitely take that feedback and provide a little more information.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for James? Okay, thanks, sir.
Communications is next.
Jeff, I think we went past finance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
At least in the
I may
order
have
that we
missed
have
that. Just fine. We'll go back to finance. Sorry.
The question I had was just around, it's on page 24, item number 5. It says, continue the development of the city's formal long-range financial plan. Is there a target for that, Andy? Finishing, scope, scale, et cetera? Like, when do you want to have that in place? Well, it's finance 2026 service objectives. So yeah, I'm just. Yeah. I mean, what's kind of looking ahead?
Use your microphone. Use your microphone, Andy.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, and is this something? I mean, this seems like it's a new thing, or is it something you want to do a different way than it's been done before?
Well, there was a solution that we entered into under previous administrator, and it was it's basically a software. We dump our numbers in there, and it allows us to build certain assumptions and things like that. And so that's been kind of a implementation process that we've been going through kind of as we have time. Under the budget scenarios, I've kind of questioned whether or not it's even worth continuing on with that. I think we can build a long-range plan on our own without that, and so that's kind of the decision point that we need to make. I think we'll make that during this budget process. But as far as, we've already got pieces of long-term planning in play across the city. It's just a matter of pulling in our normal operations and forecasting out, making assumptions about inflation and turnover and salaries and things like that into the future. So that's something that we can get implemented probably within the next year. I think that's a part of the target was to get it completed in 26.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, Director Kemp.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to that ERP implementation software. Is that what you're talking about when you were talking to him about that?
No, this is another kind of a smaller piece solution. But the ERP system is our entire accounting, HR, everything.
Are there lessons
citywide
that have been learned from that, and how departments are adjusting because of that?
Yeah, I mean the ERP implementation. I mean that was started back in 2018,
Yeah.
swimmingly implementing that. And so, I mean, we're in year 7. I mean, that was a huge learning curve for everyone in the city, I think. But I mean, we're seeing, you know, we've already seen a lot of efficiencies and benefits over just people time and growing into that system.
Let me ask you, I'm going to pull one from the spirit of my buddy George that sits beside me and ask a pointed question. What do you think, as a CFO, are the things that we should be thinking about in efforts to budget without budgeting a deficit? If we say we don't want to budget a deficit, as the CFO.
The CFO, I mean, the risk areas right now is the general fund. We've all talked about that. The other areas are safer at this point. So that is the biggest concern, is how do we fund the general fund? Obviously, there's 2 ways to go about it. You either increase revenues there, or you shrink expenditures. You can do it through efficiencies, or you can cut programs, or you can do both. And the biggest ticket item that we have is our people. So that is, I mean, if you're going to balance this budget, you can't. I mean, we can go in and say nobody goes to training or travel. I mean, that's going to help, but that's dollars and cents. That's not going to balance the entire budget, and that's not sustainable long term. The long term approach is to, like Jeff said, is to right size the programs in the general fund so that it can afford that stuff long term. You know, one of the issues that I think we're going to run into, we're compiling all the budgets right now. We don't have the full picture yet. I hope to have it soon, at least get a glimpse of what it will look like. But we're compiling all that, all the departmental budgets and the revenue projections. That's being worked on currently. But the one thing we are facing is, you know, inflation. And the biggest ticket item right there is health insurance. I don't know if you guys have, I don't know what everyone else is experiencing, but you know, we're having to raise, you know, health insurance premiums by a large margin, and we're trying to do it very gently. Probably we're hoping to do it in a 2-step process. We may not get all the way there next year, but maybe the following year. But you know, so the big ticket items is how many employees do we have, and so
and how many of those employees are connected to the general fund? Right,
that's exactly right. I mean, we have. I don't have the breakdown on me, but I mean, there's a large portion in there. And of course, some of those get our allocated programs as well, so we can factor that in. But you know, some of our larger programs aren't allocated in the general fund. You know, can we be efficient there? You know, we got to go where the money is, right? I mean, we can't just cut all the bare bones, you know, copy paper. I mean, that's not going to make a huge dent. We've got to do, and that's not really a sustainable approach in my eyes. My eyes is you know, we're either going to right size the programs in the general fund, or we're going to look for revenue sources to fund those. And that's what is sustainable in my eyes.
So as a new guy sitting here, I mean, if you make adjustments to utilities, that doesn't impact the general fund, because it doesn't. It's not funded through general fund.
No.
So, you know, beyond parks, police, and fire, what other personnel is even funded out of general fund?
Everything else. IT,
Public
HR.
safety is the biggest. Is our biggest expenses by far out of the general fund that's not allocated. Parks, and but most of the other ones are support, administrative type functions.
But I mean, I don't get the vibe that Sarah Deuster's got oodles of employees that are just sitting around the shop.
Right.
We did talk last year about reallocation of percentages, what was being funded by what and by what percentage, and we got our original plan back, and I think I had issues with it because I wanted those allocations to look a little different. But I mean, that's another place that we can see some.
But see, my understanding was, I mean, once again, as a new guy, I mean, I'm only 7 months in. I'll throw that disclaimer out. You have more tenure than I. But that looked like that was going to hurt the general fund.
That's correct.
Yeah, the way that was presented, correct.
Okay. I was going to say, so if we make those adjustments, I think we're still kind of, we need to have, I think within my own view, if it's not clear to me, and it's probably not clear to many people, I need to see a clear path of like how we can do this. And I don't think, we talk about essential services, police and fire. I mean, that I don't think is how you go out finding a way to get this done. So I think then we have to find other parameters as we look at this. I mean, it might, tightening up other departments, say like utilities tightens up something, that might help with the debt service ratio and some other things. But they're not necessarily contributing to the budgeting of the deficit. Is that correct?
One thing that, one of the things that may be an upside for us this year is, I mean, we're hearing things about property tax assessments going up. And I'm trying to verify that. I think people have anecdotal experiences of seeing this happen. So, I don't know. I haven't quantified what that increase is going to be at. What is 5 or 10%?
Yeah.
But that does two things. That helps the general fund in two ways. One, we have property taxes. It's usually about $8.5 million that comes into the general fund that funds all these programs. But we also have the police and fire pension contributions that are funded by $500,000 each. And, the general fund is in a position now where we've been having to subsidize our lot fee contribution fund to make those lot fee contributions. So we're up to about $1.92 million a year subsidizing those pension contributions, where the funding, the idea is that $500,000 that property tax is going to pay for those pension contributions. So to see if we can get a 5% or realize that or higher, we're getting it in the general fund. That increases our resources, and also it decreases the burden of us having to move funds over to that lot fee contribution fund. So that's one of the upsides that I'm hoping for as we go through this
session.
Are we
being competitive in our insurance? I mean, are we shopping that around? Are we making that a competitive look? We talk about benefits.
We're self-funded. Health insurance, we're a self-funded health insurance plan. So that is, we're basically in our own pool, risk pool. We pay we've seen a pretty good increase in claims in 25 and in 24, and so and then I think just seeing what other things. I know that the insurers in the marketplace were requesting large insurance premium increases. I take that to mean the healthcare cost trend rates are starting to snowball.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Andy?
Any other items related to finance for the moment? I guess we're down to communications.
Any questions, Director Rigo?
Yes, I may add two questions/statements. On the descriptor here on page 31 on the graph, it talks about My Fort Smith app downloads, Josh, monthly. For 2024, it says 0, current 0, target of 50 for next year. Aside from the fact that based on the trend, sounds like an aspirational target, is there a cost of any sort associated with the My Fort Smith app? I mean, is this something we should, let go or move on from if the
So we previously had the My Fort Smith app. Mm-hmm. We switched to something called Text My Gov, and we're looking at going back to another app system. It's not going to be the same back end, but yeah, there will be a cost to it.
But so is this not really even a germane statistic for us anymore? If My Fort Smith we're not.
We didn't have any downloads last year because we started to get rid of the system at the very beginning of the year, and then next year we're looking at implementing it again.
Okay, and then talked about board meeting online attendance statistics. What have you observed as sort of the average viewership on like an individual meeting?
Anywhere from 350 to 500 views per meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's what I want to talk about. The math works out to about 800 users. Like if I just took that 22,000 divided by 4 times 28, which would be the number of meetings, that's about 800. So kind of square that away with what Director Eagles said.
So some of the meetings obviously get a lot higher viewership.
Right.
But yeah, on average, I'm seeing about 350 to 500. I may just be accounting for YouTube, but there's 2 sources that I'm getting the numbers from: YouTube and Granicus, which is our streaming.
Which
platform.
one's higher?
YouTube.
YouTube's higher.
Yeah.
I mean, those are pretty good numbers. You're going to beat 25,000.
Yeah, definitely. I set an attainable goal for sure.
Right. I mean, I think that's encouraging.
Yeah.
I mean, we get a few people here, and maybe 200 or 300 people here in attendance, and that's a joke. And but adding that to another 500 that's watching online, I think that's really good, and I would like to see that number get bigger. Obviously, I think we'd rather have people here. I mean, because that's really where you can kind of interact with more. But I mean, that's a good number. I think that's a good number. I'd like to see it increase and continue us, encouraging that and sharing that out. But I think that's now. This doesn't include people watching it back, like after the fact. Okay.
Yes, it does.
So this isn't necessarily live.
Yeah, it's not live numbers.
Okay.
It's all it's viewership all the time.
Can you tell who's watching it live?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I can distill that, but I didn't go into the numbers deep enough to know.
Okay.
But typically, I'll check it, the day after or whatever. It's around 100 to 120 typically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Thank you.
Director Kemp.
Yes. Hey, Josh, how can we, and how are we, and how could we expand even with, I think of like older residents that are not online? Mm-hmm. Is there ways that we can be thinking about how we're communicating with them? I mean, is there, publications that would let us slide in on them, or, that's just a question I have for you.
Yeah, I mean, we do have like Director Martin just said, we do have the public access channel. That's Cox Channel 214, and we show all of our board meetings on there and advertise on there as well. But yes, and we're also putting out things in publications about the city. Now, not specifically towards watching board meetings, but we could do that as well. Yeah,
I was just thinking through, like, maybe those, I know there's publications that are now seeming to pop up, and when we have a huge project or a huge process or plan that's been approved, we might think about finding those channels to targeting people that are not online.
Yeah, and we do try to do bill inserts and mailers a couple times a year as well. So,
Josh, on those views, does that indicate someone watched from start to finish, or they just checked in for 5 minutes, or?
Yeah, there is a drop-off rate. I don't know what that is right off the top of my head, but you can see how long people are watching the video as well. Okay. But I'm happy to get any of that information to you all.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Josh? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
The next group is Citizen and City Services. Joshua. Questions? After that, we have the Engineering Department.
Oh, I do have questions. I thought he was coming up.
Oh,
Can we?
he certainly is.
Thank you, Josh.
Yes.
So I know billing accuracy remains high, but how do we and how can we continue to address that small percentage of errors that are creating citizens' frustrations? Like, what are things that are working there in that? And because when we hear about them, they're, I got this bill that was $9,000, and so can you speak to that?
Yeah, and so this this KPI is more so for actual billing errors in the system, and a lot of that we just put different controls in place. We learn and then change our internal policies and kind of our processes to make sure those billing errors don't happen. Now, I think a lot of different things, and even Lance would attribute to, now that we're going back to manual reading, we also have, the read errors that are a big part of that too. And so he's working on that because we do have the issue with the encoders on the Zenner meters. But this metric alone is just for my team that does the actual billing, and that team actually having any kind of errors within the actual bill run. Nothing before that on the reading process that is under currently with Lance.
And then what's the timeline for the solar LED retrofits to actually achieve that 60% for our facility cost? Is that going to take a while to actually actualize?
Unfortunately, yes. And so I'm hoping around half the year we should be able to start seeing that. Right now, they're still within the design and interconnection survey and evaluation phase with OG&E and with Arkansas Valley. They're a little bit behind. They've got, like any different project, even some delays on materials. But they're looking to be able to break ground in quarter 2 and 26. And should be able to test and launch within quarter 3 of 26.
Okay, Director Neil Martin.
So, real quick, we talked about billing accuracy. What defines that? Is that when a bill goes out the door, and somebody calls back in, and we go through that whole process, or kind of talk me through that, because I've got some questions about the 98% and what that actually means.
Yeah, and so a billing error is basically something that happened within the bill run that we missed on some of our checks that we do against some of the high reads and different things like that. And if one went through, then that's actually on the billing team that we didn't catch that, and it becomes a billing error that then we have to adjust because of something with my team didn't do.
Meaning, is the bill gone out?
Yes.
So the bill goes out to the customer?
Yes.
Okay. So when I look at that 98%, if you start doing the math, 35,000 bills that go out, that 2% equates to 8,400 bills.
Yes, but you're doing the math based on an error per 10,000 bills. And so if you look at that 98%, you're looking at our metric as less than 10, and that's where we're at right now. And so that's less than 10 errors per 10,000 bills. So you want to keep that metric within.
So I can't take 35,000 bills, roughly, multiply it by 12, and then multiply that by 2% to get me the 8,400.
Yes, we want to be less than that as far as
right. That'd be 8,400, which equates to 700 bills a month. But maybe I need a little more explanation as to what that is, because that even though it's 2%, seems really high.
Yeah, and I'll give you the actual formula and metrics on the industry standard for that one.
Okay, all right.
Anything else for Josh? Thanks, sir.
Now, the engineering department is next. And I don't know if Ben, if there are questions.
Any questions for engineering?
Well, I do, and maybe we get into it when we talk about this, but I really want to talk about the overlay, how that process is defined. And again, we don't have to do it now. I don't want to double do it, but that street overlay process, I've got questions about, because I do get complaints from people about streets in the city of Fort Smith. Whether that's a pothole, whether that needs a street resurfacing, I'm not sure. But that's something that I feel is consistent. I don't know if it's valid. I mean, a lot of people, they'll talk about Rogers Avenue, they'll talk about Zero, they'll talk about Midland. Those are state highways. There's nothing we can do about it. But I've had kind of issues with some of the streets that we do. Like my neighborhood got done, and I know that there's other streets that are worse than mine. So when we get to it, when we talk about this, I think we need to talk about what that formula is, or at least we have some kind of explanation come back to the board as to what that process is and how streets are getting on the list to be resurfaced.
There's actually a project that we're talking about on the list here that we can break down and kind of go through.
Okay.
It's basically a street rating, sign rating, and Well, you hire a firm that comes through with a camera that goes through and basically counts cracks, counts
So
signs.
I saw that we haven't done that since 2005. Is that correct?
That was for the master plan.
That's the master plan?
And so this one, I believe the last one was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm
Really?
not positive on that.
Okay.
But I'd have to double check.
So they go and they take pictures of every street or some kind of measurement
Yeah.
of every street, and then that goes back to, age and all these other things, factors come into, this is what we're going to resurface this year, what we're going to resurface next year, the year after that.
Well, what they do is they actually just give a rating on the streets themselves, and then it's on our end typically to go ahead and divvy out which streets are actually going to get
Okay.
additional work.
How often should we be doing that?
I don't know that answer, Matt. You think 2 years? Yeah.
Every
Okay.
couple of years,
Yeah.
so it's been 3 or 4?
Do you know the last time it had happened?
Yeah, it's been 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been longer than 2. I know that for sure.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
The Planning and Zoning Department is next. Anything?
Any questions for Maggie?
Sorry. Community development.
Maybe we just say if we've got something, make a motion so they don't have to come up.
Anyone have any questions for Candace?
Building safety,
No?
neighborhood services,
No. Okay, thank you. Next.
police. Neighborhood services. Police department.
I just had one about, it was item number 4, looking ahead for 2026. Administrative Division, acting within a new framework established in 2025, will seek to expand the Reserve Officer Program. I just wondered, kind of what's the size that's in mind for the Reserve Officer Group, and do we currently have any reserve officers, and if so, how many?
So we do currently have some reserve officers. I'm going to have to, Dan, can you, how many reserve officers we have? We have 5. He can probably speak to this better than I can. This is under his division. But
What's kind of the target, ideal size for that group?
So we don't actually have a target per se right now. What we're looking to do, so our reserve program it used to be fairly robust, used extensively to augment patrol in special events and things like that. And with our CALEA accreditation, there was some push for a change in how they're trained, meaning there was an understanding that it was an hour for hour. They had to have exactly the same number of hour for hour training as a regular patrol officer, and that's clearly impractical for the average person to go through a 17-week academy. So we saw the program shrink to include really just prior full-time people who used to work here. And the vision is to get back to citizen volunteers. And in order to accomplish that, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to develop a training program that is CALEA accredited, something that is compliant with CALEA and gives them not necessarily hour for hour the same training, but the same quality and scope of training that are given to our regular full-time officers, so that we can get back to the idea of citizen volunteers. And we can gauge interest. We're at the infancy of it right now, so once we can really gauge interest and figure out kind of how big it can be, then it's going to be a question of how big do we want it to be.
And the reserve officers aren't paid at all?
They're not paid at all.
Okay, thank you.
Director Neil Martin.
One thing I did have a question on, I saw that we've got the 2024 service objectives. Any reason, did 25 not get done?
So I think they just measure on the 12-month annual basis.
Okay.
So since 25 is in play, they're just
Okay.
measuring. They've always historically
Okay,
done this.
okay. But, I go back to what I said earlier. You guys were very specific. Item 26, this will be measured by a 10% decrease. We'll reduce the number of cruelty to animal cases by 20%. Bike officers will reduce trespassing incidents by 15%. I mean, those are good. We're shooting for something, and I like the numbers associated with it. So I really appreciate, I mean, this was a lot. This was a whole lot, and I appreciate it. Not necessarily do I need that much, but you guys were very detailed in this. 27 different measures, service objectives. I mean, that's really pretty good, and you guys should be commended for the level of specificity and detail that you guys put into this. So thank y'all.
Anything else for police? Yes.
You know, and I don't know if it's a question for them as much as if they want to weigh in on it. I understand if they didn't. Is it a question for me and the board? I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. The Crane Kia property, I know they talked about establishment of a new police precinct. As much as I think I would favor that because it puts police on the side of town that I'm responsible and serve and live in. But I would also say the police response time is already good. And I start thinking about, when we talk about projects and new projects, thinking about how this is going to get funded and the magnitude of it. But even if, with the conversation of leasing vehicles, which I'm for, from the study session based on what I've heard, you know, the need of the shop may not be as much as it was by the fact if we didn't do the leasing the vehicles and things. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, is this the direction that we still feel is good, and or is this putting a burden on you all as a police department, you know, is it really going to add efficiency for the police department, or is it kind of one of those things that it was a project that was birthed and the city administrator believed in it and wanted to make a bold move? But I mean, we're talking about a pretty big project here.
It is a big project, and one of the biggest advantages that I could see to it is with our department being downtown, anytime an officer on the south side of town or east side has to go back to the police department, it takes a long time. So they're out of service possibly if they're needing to go get more paperwork or supplies or things like that. So it would help in that sense about having stuff that's closer for them to use. But obviously funding is something that we're working on for that. So, I mean, that's going to involve the board obviously in that as well. But that was kind of some of the thinking about that as well, just trying to get more of a presence in that area where people can come to the police department easier if they wanted to on that side of town and be more visible right on 71.
Thank you.
That's supposed to be a service department also, right?
The service department is going to be for the entire city, I believe, for anything under a one-ton vehicle.
Would that not save money being under one roof?
I'm sure it would. The police department was going to have a training facility and a precinct there. Yeah. And then the southernmost building was going to be, I think, utilities.
Well, it's going to be a mixture of service department for many departments, and that is still, you know, the focus on the property is the efforts from the police department. You know, things like a centralized fleet location for those types of things we've put on hold in terms of, is that something that we want to do? Is it something that ultimately we think will benefit us? I mean, I think the 3 buildings on the property, like as they've said, two of the buildings are intended for the police precincts and the training center. That 3rd building may also be available for that type of use. We haven't determined that yet. I mean, I think that 3rd building is in a bit of question as to what we end up doing with it. The centralized fleet is still a possibility. We just haven't determined that makes sense for us yet.
Jason, do we not pay the county to use their training facility by being here?
That was a point that Director Dennis just brought up. We do have some employees in other areas, and I think we share with the expenses there. I don't know that we pay rent, but I think we share with some of the expenses.
So to get out of there would save us money?
Yeah, that function is our training function. Yeah. That would be moved to this new.
Which will save money. Right?
It would save us. Yeah, it would save us having to pay. It would be our stuff that we were paying for instead of paying for the counties. So.
Is the vision that our training facility also might get customer base by these other agencies? Do we envision that they may come use our stuff?
Yes, we want to be a premier training agency for this region. We're the largest agency in the region, and we want to attract that kind of, you know, other agencies here and have a nice facility to show them and train them in. So we do a regional training academy already, so it would definitely help us with that.
Do we think grants is a play here at all with this facility, Jeff?
It is, and that is something that we're continuing to look for, yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just say, because it's not a question, so I mean, I have no problem interjecting here. I mean, I would really caution us to be too hasty in liquidating an asset that could be liquidating the property that could be a potential asset to, law enforcement moving forward. Because I have to imagine, even if it takes us a few years to secure grants or funding of that nature, that the costs of owning a reasonably sized facility that's mostly on concrete, I mean, they've got to be fairly de minimis. I mean, what's the annual? I mean, it can't be enough to make a savings dent on the things that Andy's talking about. So if it really does seem like, I'm just saying this for the record, if it really does seem like there's some good possibilities for utilization of this law enforcement as an asset for law enforcement in our community, even if it takes a little time to fully realize those things, I think patience would be virtuous in this instance.
Okay, thank you.
Next is a new department, Public Safety Communications. Any questions on that one? Fire Department is next.
Any questions for fire?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Streets and Traffic.
Yes. Okay.
The service objective number 2 for the coming year talked about continuing to lessen the potential for property damage from flooding by regularly cleaning and clearing debris from ditches, channels, and drainage structures. Obviously, that's good, and I appreciate, and I know everybody does, the work that goes into that. There were some percentages given on KPIs in that regard for cleaning, mowing, spraying major drainage easements, rights-of-ways, interchanges, detention ponds, 3 times a year. What is the... Is there any thought given to making any changes to that tempo, or do you kind of like explain the 3 times a little bit? Is it 3 set fixed points you have on the calendar? Do you have flexibility for when we might get rainier, or someone might come across something that's overgrown more than expected? Like, just give us a sense of how much of your radar screen keeping those ditches and channels clean and clear occupies, because it's very important, and appreciate what is done.
Well, and there's 2 different groups mowing that. So some channels aren't easily accessed by equipment, and those are mowed and maintained by the A-team. And so how often we get to that is dependent upon simply how many A-team members we get, And so like this summer, we've had less A-team members than normal, so it's been taking a little longer to get around. We'll definitely hit 3 times a year on everything, but it's taking a little longer to get around. If it's something that's with our regular mow crews and everything, so we're getting more than, we're doing better than 3 times a year with those for sure. I mean, we're if we happen to get a complaint on something, we'll go out and mow it. But we're generally getting to it most of things before that happens, unless we've had a period of rainfall or something, and where it's been too wet for us to get out and mow. But most things we've been able to keep up with. And like for instance, this year too, we've taken on the interchanges that Keep Fort Smith Beautiful used to maintain. There were 4 interchanges on I-540. We've actually taken over 5, though, 1 extra one. And so we'd like to take on a couple more. If we had our full staff back that wasn't frozen, we'd take on a couple more interchanges, actually.
And thank you. And I would just say, again, this is one of those things as we move into the budget and we think about priorities, keeping the ditches and the drains and the channels that the city is responsible for is very, very, very important. And I think that we would all agree that would be something, as we're talking about priorities, that we want to make sure that there's always not only the people for that. I mean, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you wish you have. So sometimes you got to redefine the objective or what you expect from them. But if we need to make sure about equipment and things like that, because this is one of those ones that, it's very controllable. And when there's negligence in that area, it's something that really stands out to people, and then because it has knock-on effects into people's yards and property and things like that. So just as we're looking at things with reasonably fresh perspectives and eyeballs this budget cycle, let's just make sure we keep that as a top priority.
Yeah.
Thank you all for the work you do.
Thank you. And our biggest issue on the mowing end, I'll just add that too, is staff and having the staff available to do it. We're pretty well equipped. It's just having people to make all that happen. Right now, we're doing fairly good with it. So.
Director Neil Martin and then Director Kemp.
Yeah, one thing I'll say publicly is I consider you one of the best at, I call you up or I send you an email, say there's an issue, that it gets taken care of. I mean,
yeah, I'll second that.
I don't think anybody's better than that.
No, there isn't.
Thank you. I appreciate
that.
So
I think you set a high standard, and I appreciate that. And I think all these people would as well. Talk to me about potholes, because that potholes comes primarily from your department, the filling the potholes. So engineering does the overlays, but when we have a pothole, your team goes out and does that. What's the methodology in which you do that? Are those somebody lets you know, or you guys are, when you're out driving around, you see them, you fix them? Kind of what's that look like? I know that's.
Well, I, for instance, myself call in 3 or 4 a day to have tickets made for potholes for the pothole crews, but also we take citizen complaints on those, and anytime we have time, we send a crew out, a pothole crew out to start running streets and start running a grid and filling in all the potholes they see.
Are you able to get through that grid, the entire city in a year with that team? I mean, it kind of sounds like that's more, not necessarily ad hoc, but maybe not as frequent as you would like. But are y'all able to cover the entire city?
Yes, I would say we can definitely cover the entire city in a year, but potholes as quickly as they develop, I mean, they can develop fairly quickly, especially when you have a very wet period, or if you have a very cold period where you have a lot of freezing. You're going to see a lot more potholes develop.
Right. Is there any collaboration between you and sanitation? Because sanitation's on those roads every day. Is there anything we could do?
No, well, there's nothing in particular. No, I mean, sometimes we do get calls from other departments about potholes and complaints, and we take those in. But there's no official collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a helpful item if all of us internally were sharing that information with you, so that those could get addressed more timely. I mean, sanitation's on every street every day.
And I agree. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I wish there was some kind of technology that we could put on those, on some of our trucks that could sense those things, and nobody had to do anything. We would just know it, and you guys would get an alert. Pothole on.
Well, that's one thing with the that's important about the that Ben had mentioned about basically the street analysis and everything, is they will identify in some way. Now that it's not 100% accurate, but what they claim is potholes through that study. When they go and video all the roads and analyze the condition, they will identify potholes, and that's the reason it's important, because then we can take that information and data and we can cover it and go start trying to fix a pothole.
Right. Well, I did email you on Sunday about something on Bluff and R. I think it was R. And I went out there today, because you said tomorrow I'll get a grade on it. I think there's a leak there that's causing that, but you said you put a grade on it. I drove by it today, grade's there. So it just shows how quickly you respond, and I've got some other things I want to talk about that with some other teams, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Kim.
I just definitely want to applaud what you guys have taken on from Keep Fort Smith Beautiful. The interstates, I'm on the interstate a lot because it's about the quickest way to get from this side of town to the other side of town in a hurry, and what you guys are maintaining is looking great, and thank you for that. And I would agree with you, as much as we're talking about personnel cuts and different things in nature, especially because you have equipment, or as we can pull back contracts that were contracted out back in-house. I think what y'all are doing with the staff and the equipment you have is a greater return on the investment for the city. So thank you for that. The one thing I wonder about, but I think the questions I have are more about how do we communicate better, or even if how you would advise me to communicate, because some of the areas of concern I have are sometimes, I think, a highway in conjunction that's right there in the middle of our city. Like example, the intersection at Phoenix and Old Greenwood Road, and you look at that intersection there and you see just like grass growing around curbs and rocks loosed all over it from whatever. We don't clean up those intersections, right? Because that's a highway.
Well,
is that correct?
right there at Phoenix and Old Greenwood Road, we will sweep that. I mean, if there's an issue there with debris on the road or anything like that, we will sweep that. So yeah, if you let us know.
So I'll just start telling you about some, because I feel like that's something I've noticed is intersections that I'm starting to see. Like, man, I wish we could get a team over here to just sweep this up, make this look good, take a weed eater for a minute.
We send a sweeper out every day. Now, we may not weed eat that. That may be something that falls to...
Or spray to kill it, yeah.
To neighborhood services there, but on the weed eating side. But as far as anything actually in the intersection from back of curb to back of curb, yeah, we'll take care of it.
And I know Rogers is going to be slated to some section. I don't know whether they're doing all of it in one fell swoop, but when we have a road that's crumbling together to now form a mound of asphalt that has joined, getting them to come out and grind it and stuff. Is that something that we can tell you guys and we can work on this coming year to getting that rectified?
Yeah, if there's something that, for instance, sometimes we run into this with tree roots pushing up asphalt, we can take that out. Some of it is easy enough. We can just go out there with a milling attachment to a skid steer and mill it off. Some of it's severe enough we actually need to cut it out and put back a concrete and an asphalt patch on top of it.
I just thought the other day I was driving by Sweet Bay and I thought, man, I'm going to get a tire alignment if I keep running over these bumps in certain ways. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
Matt, I'm getting a lot of complaints about mosquitoes again.
No, I haven't been getting a lot of complaints. No, very few.
Can we do targeted spraying? Like
that's up to the board.
The River, Village Harbor, and Hillcrest seem to be the two worst ones. The biggest complaints I get.
I mean that's up to the board because my budget for that's been cut.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we cut it out of the budget. So it was $75,000, right?
Yeah. 10.6% of my budget was cut earlier this year. I know there was some talk about us and with our fund balance being higher and everything, but we've had, just a reminder on that, we've had 10.6% of our budget cut out earlier in the year, and we've had to hold to that budget. So,
yeah. I'm just trying to figure out a way to keep everybody happy here.
Well, I do what I did, put 2 hummingbird feeders out. There's other things you can do. You can plant. There's a number of different things we can do.
We have the pellets too.
Pellets, right?
Yeah, we have those available that we've been handing out to residents that they can put in standing water, the larvicide.
Okay. I mean, I will say this. I try very much to respect what's expected of us on the board, that when a decision is made that we, and a majority decision is made, that we move on from it. And there was a vote taken 5-2 to discontinue the mosquito spraying and the money for it, and Andre and I voted to keep it, and the rest voted to eliminate it. Well, I'll take it back. Director Christina Katsavis abstained. But I'll just say it for the record because it came up. In the 4.5 years plus that I've been on the board now, I have not been communicated. It is the single most thing I have been communicated with about is absolute negativity around stopping that practice that we had. I have heard from dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people, and not a single one of them is happy with what we did. Now, I did not intend to bring that up, but since it came up organically, I wanted that reflected. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anything else for Matt? Thank you.
The next is water and sewer.
Yes, I had a comment.
Yes, you recognize.
And I mean, this is a little bit semantical, but we talk about these things and we want these things to direct in a helpful way. Number 1 talks about ensuring adequate, well-maintained water, and it's page 60, well-maintained water and wastewater treatment, water distribution, and sewer collection systems for all development, and prevent development ahead of properly constructed water distribution and sewer system or adequate water supply and wastewater treatment facilities. Next sentence, coordinate land use planning and capital programming to ensure infrastructure improvements and extensions are phased to support future land use pattern. I just happen to think that using the phrase prevent development is not good. Okay. And I would I mean, I don't think it's a good phrase to use. I don't think it's the spirit of what we wish to have happen. I think the spirit is better accurately reflected in the second sentence about making sure that things support or are phased to support future land use pattern. But when you talk about prevent development ahead of properly constructed water distribution, I mean, it makes it sound as if we do not wish development to occur, which is not the case. And it also a little bit makes it sound like that there's all these sort of things happening that are far outstripping capability, and you're talking about running around trying to stop those people from happening. I think caution is the word of the day, and prudence, but I've never gotten any kind of sense from any document we've received or any presentation you've ever made that, you know, that there's development that's far outpacing the ability, and so the ability to provide to. So I just think the phraseology and the characterization is it's more alarming perhaps than it's intended to be, or maybe that's exactly what you intended and there's a little bit of a disconnect in what has been communicated with us and what we've been working on. So I guess a little bit of work is probably required, a little bit of pencil work is probably required on objective number 1, unless there's something you need to clarify for us.
No, we have had times where development has occurred and then people have come back and said we want water and there's no water to provide them. So I agree.
Yeah, but where are those things at now? What's an example? What's a status?
Some are, well, Racetrack Road, which we brought to the board last year, that we're going to have to, you know, eventually loop a water supply to provide the fire suppression requirements, and buildings were already built, and then the developer came and said, hey, I need water, and we didn't have water in that area to provide the proper fire flow. However, I don't disagree that we can change that verbiage to make it less alarming.
Any other questions? Director Neil Martin.
Lance, it appears as though your targets for water leaks is unattainable. Your goal for 2025 is to have, the way I'm reading it, less than 100 leaks.
Correct.
On the pending list. And we're at I don't know.
We're at
643.
When this was done, yes.
Okay. And then your target for 26 is also less than 100.
Right.
Is that attainable?
We continue to whittle that down, and we're hoping.
What are we at right now?
As of this point right now, we have 659. Okay. We normally see an increase in August, July, August, and September. We see an increase because that's the drier months. It pulls, you know, when the ground dries out, it pulls apart, and it stresses the lines, and that's where we see a lot of leaks develop. And then the other months we catch up. We actually see that decrease. And we are expecting the equipment that the board approved to be coming in. The last pieces, which are the 2 dump trucks, should be here. We were hoping the end of this week, possibly next week. And once that is done, that will allow us to fix more. The other issue that we've been dealing with is we lost basically 2 days due to large emergencies.
Sure.
So when those things happen, it does put us a little bit behind.
But is it attainable to say, I mean, it doesn't look like it's attainable in 25 that we would get under 100. Do you think, and you mentioned the equipment, you think it's attainable to have less than 100?
That, it may not be attainable, but that's our goal. And we are going to continue to strive to get to that goal. Eventually, and what I've heard from the board in the past is you want to see less than 50.
Right, but I to be honest, we haven't been in that ballpark, this 100 ballpark. I would like to see. I mean, we had 739 in 24, 25 we're at 643. So we're in that same ballpark. What I would like to see is under 500 in 25. Okay. 250 in 26. I mean, just because we're not getting to 100.
All right.
I don't see us getting to 100. If you can get to 100, I'm all for it. But we're not getting close to 100. And I think that's one of my biggest frustrations is the number of these water leaks. I think what I was just talking to Matt Meeker about, I just sent an email because I think there's a leak at that same place that he put a grate over a pothole because, and I think it's a water leak there. But this is the thing that people get the most frustrated about are these water leaks all over the place. On top of our water rate increases and things like that, they look at this and say, are we doing our job on this end because the citizens are being asked to do this? And I think this is really probably one of the more frustrating things that I see when I talk to people and when people communicate with me, whether it be emails, whether it be on Facebook, whatever. It's this is what people complain about. So we've got to figure out a way. And I'm very interested to see what happens with this new equipment. If we start to get that down, and does that does that cause the board to allocate more dollars? So we got to see these numbers start to decrease, and then maybe there's some additional things that can come out of that. So that's just me.
Director Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. One, Lance, thank you to you and your team. You guys jumped on that leak on Jenny Lynn and Glen Flora, and it was tearing the road up. And Matt, y'all were doing a great job repairing on it and getting through the process. But to the point of that specific project, it ended up not being one leak. It was 5 leaks in one area, which no wonder the road was being blown upon. And I think if we can prioritize the thoroughfare roads, the big target roads. But I personally love the goal of less than 100, specifically because of the size of investment in gear that we've made for equipment. And I think once you have that, and then your team's report about taking the other equipment to repair so that even if something does come, there's days where y'all aren't missing work. The question I do have, though, is we had also discussed within the same time frame, because you had 5 crews, we talked about potentially once they're all rolling, and maybe this is not right away, but maybe I think at 26, is there still the possibility of us buying pipe wholesale and having the 5th crew doing some line work? Because I think about if you have 5 leaks, what's the chances that we just need to take that run of pipe, further and put new pipe in? I mean, is there a possibility of us doing that in-house?
Can we do the construction in-house? Some of it, yes. Some of it, no, because of the complexity. Are we going to get wholesale price on pipe? No. We have talked to all of the manufacturers directly that will talk to us, and their response was, this is your supplier in Arkansas. You can also buy from this supplier in Oklahoma, because they already have contracts, kind of non-compete contracts throughout the U.S. So we've actually talked to.
But if you want to go to Missouri,
again, they have this whole
no compete thing.
Basically, we could go buy it in Missouri.
I was just naming a state.
Would it be a little bit better pricing? I don't know, but a lot of what we purchase, of course, we end up paying tax on, and that goes back into the city because we're buying it local.
What was the number of leaks that we kind of came up with, Neil and Lance? Maybe I'll remember. We did math that night and said, okay, if we have 5 crews really running with the right equipment, which is why I think that was the best move forward. What was the threshold that the 5 crews can do in a month?
If everything was great, I believe we were looking at 120 to 175, 150 being the target. We're sitting right now this month with paperwork that has been closed. There's some paperwork that hasn't been closed at 109, but please note that we did lose 3 days with having basically every crew that we had working on the 24-inch line break and the 16-inch line break and the 6-inch line break that all occurred at the very beginning of the month.
If we don't get the numbers higher, then I think Director Martin's comments are valid for sure, in the sense that, the front door has to be, smaller than the back door, so to speak here, or the back door has to be smaller than the front door. I mean, the fact that we need to be fixing if you fix 175 leaks, but 140 are reported, then you really move the list just a small amount versus doing it. But I hear you saying the winter and the fall will slow down on leaks reported.
Yes.
I mean, do we have an idea of like how many leaks were reported in like October? Do we kind of have an rough shot of that?
I can get that information for the
But I
board.
was
I don't
thinking,
have
like,
it.
if you think through that, if they're going to fix, I call it 150, 160 leaks, you're going to need less than 100, reported in, so you can gain 50 repairs on the list. So I don't know, if you're at 600, chewing that down, I mean, maybe by the end of 26, but I agree. Thank you.
Record good.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of comments on the water leak situation. So, first of all, I want to thank you, just like we gave Mr. Meeker kudos on his department. Every time that I've reported a water leak, either yourself or Justin Perkins respond immediately and get the leaks put on the priority list. Some, of course, get fixed faster than others. But the thing I want to say about, the front door being smaller than the back door, or however you said it.
Just trying to think through my head.
Yeah, and the complaints. This is one of those situations where, we know that, this is more than just providing a service. We're dealing with a very aging system. We're also dealing with some extreme weather conditions, whether it's very cold or very hot or very wet. And all of that attributes to malfunctions of our system and deterioration of our system. So not only do we have to keep up, we have to continuously invest in putting in some new lines. So I just wanted to thank you, like we thank Matt and your team, for doing a great job as well.
Thank you.
I just want to say I agree with you. I'm nervous about an infrastructure that's aging, and I fix a joint, and then I know that the rest of the line down the road is old.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say Director Settle won me over when he was talking about, hey, let's get one team just putting line in. So if we fix this house on North 8th Street, then let's just peel on down and push the line even more.
And that was part of the conversation where we're talking about getting the equipment to give our manpower the equipment to do the job that we're asking them to do. Because not only are our crews supposed to be fixing leaks right there on the spot, but to do a whole line if we can.
Yeah.
So
To give you an idea, on Garrison Avenue, we have 2 blocks that are sand cast. The main lines are sand cast iron. They are over 140 years old. We know exactly when they were put in.
They ain't blown yet?
George, please don't put that out in the atmosphere.
I'd say it's an incredible pipe.
But here's the challenge. We can't do anything to that pipe. If we expose that pipe, if we dig it up, we know that the chance for a blowout and putting a large portion of Garrison Avenue out of service is high. I wouldn't say 100%, but I'd say greater than 90%.
Can you pipe burst it?
No, that pipe bursting's used for sewer line.
Yeah.
This is water line.
No water.
So in that case, do you advocate that we run a new line and then just
So that's what we would look at doing
that connection?
is, yes, and that's exactly what we look at doing on some of these is what is the best solution? Abandoning the line in place, running a parallel line of PVC or ductile iron, depending upon what the specifications require, alongside it. But then we also have to make new taps for all of the businesses that are tapped off of that. And that's going to be a fairly large project because you're talking about doing work directly in a state highway. So there's a lot that goes into the planning of that. And we do have aging infrastructure. A lot of it's galvanized. We have asbestos concrete pipe, which is very difficult to work with. And, we had unfortunately, concrete cylinder pipe, which is something I really never want to hear again. That's a 24-inch main that we lost at the beginning of this month. And luckily, we were able to find a company that could manufacture the parts on Sunday, drive them up Sunday night, and we could get those repairs made on Monday.
I think to the point that what I think we're talking about, though, could be maybe, and I hear what you're saying because I agree with you, perhaps, though, what we're talking about could be done more at residence. You know, I mean, if you're talking about you fix a residence leak, but then I remember the report was a good percentage of those get called back in the same area again, because when I fix this leak, it causes this leak. And so that resident spirit that we're talking about, that it becomes a public perception thing. It doesn't even have to be facts-based at all. But if we could be laying new line within those residents that have old lines, then not only are y'all fixing the leaks, but you're not getting called back to that area, which then allows you to fix other issues that you need to fix. So it may not be the commercial side as much as it is in the residential areas.
The one thing that you also have to look at is we need to make sure that people stay in water. So how do we do that where if we are doing a new tap, and I can speak from experience, you're out of water while that tap is being made. So that house it's coordinating with the residents as well that's in that block saying, okay, for the next 6 hours, you will not have water because we have to break this to put in the new valving to secure and then make a new tap on that. So there is a lot of coordination, but it is definitely something we are looking at.
Thank you.
Lance, for those 140-year-old pipe, do we have any plan of or timeline in which we would want to replace that?
In the next 5 to 10 years, for sure.
So obviously that would require some planning and some execution. Is there a project design in the books or being worked on? And I know that, you know, we have to be conscious of, with every one of these things we talk about, we have to be conscious of the debt service coverage ratio and what maintenance costs and all that kind of stuff. However, I'm going to say this, with that 100% in line, not saying I'm advocating this, but with our consent decree, we are replacing capacity. We're replacing lines. Do we have anything like that in terms of looking at all of our water infrastructure to see, you know, what needs to be replaced based on age, deterioration, all that kind of stuff?
So if you'll look, that is actually item 3 that we are working on for that is we have that on the sewer side and we're working on that on the water side.
So we don't have that on the water side?
We do to a certain extent. We know the key things, asbestos concrete pipe. We actually have the galvanized pipe designed. It's sitting on the shelf waiting to go. And when that is implemented, and we actually have some congressionally directed spending, about $3 million for that we'll have roughly a $4 million project. It was a $12 million project, so we're only going to do about a third of what needs to be done. But that will also reduce water leaks because a lot of the galvanized pipe is what leaks multiple times.
Right. I guess, you know, just ballpark this for me. If we replaced our infrastructure that is of asbestos, you know, all the different things that you have, what would the dollar associated with that be? 100 million?
Well over.
Okay, never mind.
One other question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Lance, we also talked about, I remember recalling that study session as well, on the pressure in certain areas needs some regulation. What about that? I mean, is that anywhere in scope to try to buy or acquire what we need to handle the pressure and lowering the pressure?
We actually have one of the properties already purchased to put that on. There's a couple others that need to be, you know, figured out. I think, if I remember right, it's a total of 3 for the downtown unregulated pressure zone. That is actually on the CIP. When we had a 10-year CIP for water, that is one of the items that has already been identified, and we have an engineering estimate on. We do not have design on that yet.
And that funding, is that general fund funding?
No, that is all that we're talking about here is water and sewer funding.
And is there realistic dollars to address that, or do we feel like, I mean, could you give me the confidence on where you feel like the funding is on that?
We do not have the funding at this time.
Okay. I mean, I think that's something, I mean, we talk about pipes and leaks. The pressure was one thing that they brought up. One of the leaders in the department there was talking about we need to control pressure. So, I mean, I think there's another factor there as well. Thank you.
Any other questions for, hi. Any other questions for Lance? Okay, thanks, sir.
The next group is Parks and Recreation.
Any questions for Parks and Rec? Okay, thank you.
Solid Waste is next.
Any questions for Solid Waste? Okay, thank you.
And Transit.
And Transit. Any questions for Transit? Okay, no questions? Okay.
I got a question on transit, just quickly. Ken, you could just even nod. Okay, he's coming. All right. That project getting you access to for the buses to store at night and all that, and we had the issues with the railroad company. I mean, have we gotten resolution, and are we moving on it?
Well, we actually met with FTA today. Jerry Canfield and I met with 5 different officials from FTA, and we discussed the eligibility criteria for moving forward. It would include acquiring and constructing a rail spur to mitigate the safety concerns, and FTA was wanting to know more about, why we would need that, and I feel confident that the meeting went very well, and they asked us to go ahead and expand our categorical exclusion for environmental purposes. They asked us to go ahead and start entering information into the grant application. So I think we're supposed to know in the next couple of days whether they're going to go with eligibility on that. It sounds very favorable, but they wanted some things from the railroad as well, which we feel like is very achievable. So that project looks like it's back on track and going forward.
So how long until you would have your access?
Well, I mean, as far as the construction process goes.
Yeah, turnkey, like operating.
Okay. When we spoke with the railroad, they indicated their portion they could do in approximately 4 weeks, so that's a quick turnaround. I'm sure our portion is going to take a little bit longer. There's some ditch improvements that we're going to have to make, drainage improvements we're going to have to make, a box culvert, things of that nature. So it's going to go into next year, I'm sure. But okay. But we're certainly moving forward, and I think if we can get this agreement secured, we should be able to get started on it pretty quick.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Director Neil Martin?
Ken, I don't know if I've ever necessarily seen it or really focused in on it, but that cost per passenger, basically $13 per passenger. Is that every time somebody steps on the bus, it's $13?
It is. How that's calculated is dividing the expenses by the ridership. Yeah. And so, yes, that is how that's.
Okay. I mean, I know these are federal dollars. I want to be good stewards of our federal dollars as well. And getting that cost down, I think, is important for us. So.
And when you look at that, that's an average of our demand response and fixed routes, where fixed routes may be as low as like $4 a passenger trip. They're relatively low. The demand response is relatively high. It's a higher degree of service, personal service, but it's for people with maybe cancer treatments.
Right. What should we be looking for in terms of a cost per passenger?
I mean, that's pretty average.
Is it really?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ken? Okay. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
That was the last one? Okay. With that, we will go to the second item on the agenda. Why don't we take a quick 5 or 6 minute break, and we'll come back.
Well, we're all talked on that. I thought that was it.
What's that?
We got some other stuff on there?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. We dived on that one.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 2 on the agenda. Okay. So you're going to lead the discussion on these projects.
If I might introduce, this is Ben Martz, our interim director of engineering, and since we had the election in May and reallocated some of our sales tax, a big question has come up. This program, the CIP program, is built on for the last 40 years has been built on having 1 cent sales tax going towards streets and bridges and the associated drainage. But since that was reallocated earlier this year, we have 5/8 of a penny now going towards those programs instead of the full penny. And so there's been interest in reevaluating some of these projects and looking to how that reduction in revenue impacts what we're planning for the next number of years. And so Ben has tied into that specific question, which has led to this information that he's presented this evening and ready to talk about tonight.
Good evening. Okay. First thing, let me apologize. I had to pass out a new set of numbers here. We had some updated revenue estimates from finance and also some operating cost forecast. With that, generally speaking, except for 2026, the other years saw about a $1.3 million drop overall. If you look at this sheet right here, in the stuff that I've handed out here, that shows what has changed. The item that I revised on this is the future overlay reconstruction and railroad projects. I ended up cutting $4 million from 2026 and 2027. So just that's a little bit different than what you saw on the original board packet, and I apologize for that. As Jeff explained, we've revised this based on the 5/8 cent sales tax, and we've shuffled around the projects that are currently in design. Those that are in design, we're obviously trying to still keep those on track for what money we do have. One of the big things I want to point out, if you go to I guess it's the second big blue page of the 11 by 17. It's the section 1.1. You'll see the 2503B is the project number. B, C, and D. Those have green text on them that says contain consent decree work. Those are time sensitive, and so we've not moved those construction points out. But if you notice, there are several others that have design that have been done in 24 and 25 that we've moved construction services out to 29 and 30, just to be able to balance the budget. The goal on this was try to leave some of the available funds at the end of the year. That way we could be able to kick off some projects. But as we move out to 2030, 2031, based on the current setup, we're getting pretty tight on the budget. So, and the big thing is, this is a starting point. This is not, this is the first stab at it, and I wanted to get y'all's opinions on it, to see how y'all wanted to go from here. I'll answer any questions you got here.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Director Neil Martin.
Well, I thought the information was good. What I want to do is spend a little more time on this guy.
Yep.
Maybe not necessarily tonight, but it allows me to compare it to what we approved in 25 for, all the way out through 29. So I'm seeing, the drops in total expenditures for 26, 27, 28, 29. And what I really want to do is look at some of these projects that we had on the list in the 25 approval, and then go over here and kind of compare them to what you've got now. So some things should have dropped off of there because maybe they've been pushed forward.
Right. Yes.
And so that's really having this data to kind of take a look at it and see what we need. The one thing I'm not real wild about is the street overlays at 3.6 million in 26. I like to keep that up a little higher and maybe take some of the projects off. But obviously there's there's a cost, there's a balancing out there.
Well, and one of the things we are also dealing with is staff. I mean, I'm the only engineer that's actually in the engineering department
but
right
now. There's no change to that. That's generally how it's been, right? Have you always been in the department?
Well, I'm not even.
You're not even in the department.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
So Stan was the only engineer prior to this. So now you're the only engineer. So we don't really. Things are the same, pretty much.
To an extent, yes.
Okay. All right. So keep going. I'm sorry.
Yep. And so staffing is probably the biggest bottleneck on getting projects out right now. I've only got so much time where I can manage projects at this point.
Right.
One of the biggest things that we're focusing on, and talked about it with going to career fairs. We're set up to go to U of A for the engineering career fair in, I think it's the first week of not September. I forgot when it is. Third week of September, maybe. So the intent is to build up staff. We've got several that are, within the next year are going to be retiring out more than likely. And so that is a big focus for our department, is to make sure that we're not just getting projects out just to get projects out, but also building staff up so that there's some redundancy, but also longevity as well.
So you are the only engineer?
I'm the only engineer.
When have we had more than 2 engineers in the department?
Well,
when have we had 2 engineers or more?
I think last year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I always thought it was Stan, and like we went years without having multiple engineers.
I mean, prior to last year, I don't remember when there was ever a time when it was just Stan before that.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's always been 1 or 2. I think we have 4 project engineers budgeted and have for many years.
Is that Stan and 4 positions?
Stan plus 4, yes. Okay. Sorry, the director plus 4.
Okay.
And then I think in the entire time that I've been here, 14 years, I don't know that we've ever had all 5 of those positions filled at the same time.
Right.
I think there have been times when we've had 4 of them filled. We've had folks leave to other departments, which has been a net positive. And really on a lot of things, but we weren't able to backfill those positions. I think for a long time we had 2. I think we went with 2 plus the director for a long time. And frankly, I mean, I'll look at Matt just because Matt probably remembers the details more. If we need more details on that, I'm sure we can come to it. But that's the extent of my memory.
Well, and I will say that Matt and Billy have both helped pick up the slack on areas where they are, but I mean, they've got their whole other world that they're having to take care of at the same time.
And so the goal, having engineers in-house means we can do all the design work in-house. We don't have to send it out.
No, it's not that. It's managing projects so that we can actually get projects out the door for construction and design.
Do you have to be an engineer for that? You do?
I would recommend that strongly. I mean, you don't need to stamp and seal something, but if you don't have the technical expertise on it, I mean, it's kind of hard to manage something you don't understand.
That makes sense. Okay, that's all I got right now.
Okay. Any other questions? Director Kemp.
Yes, I know when I met with Stan coming in, to obviously didn't realize he was retired in the middle of the year, but we had talked about even the project that was up for slate for Brook and Hill, Jenny Lynn, Brook and Hill going up. Are we still slated to put that out for bid this year? And because I know it's not on this list. So I don't want to see that.
To my knowledge, there's not a plan set on. Well, let me step back here, make sure I understand which part you're talking about. I've heard several different concepts on the Brook and Hill.
Not Brook and Hill, just that Jenny Lynn from that slice going up. The 5 leaks, for instance, that just got fixed were timely because there's a lot of potholes on that road going up, but also. Why go resurfacing until you get the leaks fixed? But now that the leaks are fixed, I think there are people that wonder, that section now being done. I think it goes from Heather Oaks to Brook and Hill, and it's Jenny Lind.
Honestly, I'll have to dig in and get.
I think that overlay project was designed and nearly ready to go, but I think then we started having some of this other discussion of how do we adjust that or not. But I think the overlay portion is designed, or at least close to.
So all I'm just doing is putting this on as a representing that. I would say, if it isn't, I'd love for it to be on a list. I don't want it to see it being forgotten.
Do you remember off the top of your head which year that was?
I think it might have been a 24 design project because it was ready to. Well, it might have even been a 23 because it.
let's see, looking through real quick just to see, because I've got all the exhibits for those overlays right here.
Because I think the only thing that paused on it was that I was just asking a couple key questions, and then before we could all get collaborative together, it took a back seat, if you will. But I would like to see.
Okay, so here it is. It's 2403F, which for that one, yeah, we're showing that you've got the 2025 expenditure. That's showing the design phase on it. We've got zero money in it, which means it is complete on its design phase. And so I don't have personal knowledge of the project just because I haven't worked on that portion yet. But we do have the money slated it's currently slated for 2026 and 2027 based on this very preliminary proposal here. Yeah, so it's on the agenda at least at this point.
Perfect. I'd love to be in communication with you guys about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have anything further?
That is it at this point. The biggest thing, as conversations go on, I just want to make sure that we do have that consent decree component on a couple of those, just make sure we understand if we do end up letting those slip, that is work that I'm not confident that our city crews, just due to the complexity, are able to do. And so with that, I would encourage those to make sure that we stay on schedule with those.
I would agree.
So.
Yep, if they're consent decree related.
Just one other one here I see on the list is the Towson Avenue, Garrison Zero. Is that where we're moving our utilities so that we can take RDOT? So we're saying 29 in 2030?
That's the best guess, and some of that, so the money that engineering department is doing on that is a portion that we're going to end up paying RDOT. It's not necessarily construction from the engineering department. The part that we're waiting on right now is for, and Lance, please correct me if I'm misstating this. I believe we're waiting on funding for utility department right now, and this is based on the current estimate they have is when we would expect our funding to go out to RDOT to do the work for both the roadway and the storm drainage that's along Towson.
And is that funding identified at all? No, I see a head turning. No, okay. Yeah. I mean, is there money that RDOT is reimbursing us that we will see come back that can take on that project?
At least for the engineering standpoint, we're giving them money as part of their work that they're doing on it. And so, yeah, that's...
All right, thank you.
Okay. Did we get $12 million in congressionally directed funds for that?
No, we did not. No,
I think it was frozen in the.
Well, and I don't think it was over for the Towson project. It was part of the transmission line, the $12 million, which I don't think we actually got awarded. We did apply for a grant. And
I thought we got it like at the end of 23.
It was like half of the amount we needed.
Here comes Chris. Here comes Chris with the details.
And Womack, I thought, had $4 or $5 million for us, but we didn't ever attach a project to it. Oh yeah, Womack did. He did take care of Towson. That was. I'm thinking the transmission line. I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. So, from my understanding, in FY24, we had put in $12 million for the Towson Avenue project, but apparently there was discussion between former Administrator Gefkin and the congressman then transitioned that request, and I think that was then for the water transmission line for Section 3.
So there was communication that said, hey, take it from here and move it over here?
Yes, sir.
And I believe the reason for that was because we put in for the, what was the name of that grant? The, I want to say CLIP or DSIP.
Okay, yes. So the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, they had the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. And at the time, when we put in an application, we thought we were going to get that, and we were denied it. So I believe that's why there was that change. That was prior to me being here. So that's why we do not have it. Now, I can say, as of now, we don't have anything for Towson at all, if that's something that the board wants to put in for FY26 or for FY27, we can definitely do that. Or if we want to go after the DSIP program again, we can. Now, I will say we are getting the study done with the Mission Installation Resilience Grant that we're doing currently with the base. That's going to provide us some recommendations. But once we have that study in hand, that's when I then think we can go after money from the DOD.
So my question in this is, what if we choose not, they're saying move the utilities, but if those utilities are operational, is it opportunity to say we're just going to leave them, and if they are damaged down the road, we'll fix it like we would any other road in Fort Smith? I mean, is there a way to forego this? I mean, I know that I love new infrastructure, but I'm sitting here saying if we have other infrastructure older than this infrastructure, what if we just say build your road and we'll handle it as it needs to be
I
handled?
thought that's why Towson was so bad as it is. I mean, since they resurfaced it, but I think that correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, the leaks and the stuff underneath was bad that it deteriorated Towson.
I thought it was their sewer infrastructure that they will upgrade, and we're moving our water line. Lance, do you want to weigh on what are the utilities that need to be moved? As RDOT, when I went to that meeting at the library, they were boasting about what they were going to do in deepening the, all the waterways and all this and that. So it kind of like they were talking about spending their money. I mean, is the moving of utilities just water lines?
So there are a few sewer lines, but the majority are water. We are working with RDOT to see if there is any chance for reimbursement on this project. We have found that we do have records going back that several of the water lines that exist predate Towson Avenue being a state highway, which is definitely in our favor. But again, this is a give and take, and this is something that actually has just been developing over the last 7 days with RDOT. So we are looking at that. I will tell you that the cost estimate to move the utilities, we did ask for an updated one, is $30 million. And that was as of yesterday.
See, and that just makes it feel like it'll be 2030 never kind of thing. I mean, talking about coming up with $30 million to move, utilities just so that we could have the road finally fixed with the drainage, which arguably is the biggest problem in my opinion. I don't see water leaks washing Towson Avenue. I see heavy rains that the system was not built right to handle that, and that's something that's on their dollar. I'm just sitting here saying, why not just build the road and let us deal with our infrastructure as we need to?
Some of that is because to do the drainage, our pipes are in the way, so they're going to have to do something with them. The other aspect is, and this is, again, up to the board and how RDOT would look at it, is if we do get an overlay that's supposed to last 10 years before, and then all of a sudden we're having to cut into it a lot to fix leaks, then you've got a patchwork, and we have a brand new overlay that has a bunch of weak spots now that we've had to do open cut and things of that nature. So trying to fix it, be proactive in that aspect with and some of this infrastructure goes back to the 40s and 50s. Some of these pipes do.
But even then, this is me pushing not on you, but on the process, that if they're going to be digging, and let's say they go, but we know we have your couple lines that you guys got to fix, and because when we get there, we're going to be exposing it. Where's the $30 million? Is the $30 million in the actual pipe cost?
It was pipe and construction cost is what the estimate is at this time.
Yeah.
Is the pipe really porous?
I mean, it's concrete. It's asbestos concrete. It's ductile. It's a hodgepodge of materials that are just past their lifespan.
So that's contributing to the.
It can contribute to some of the issues. Yes.
I mean, Towson was the worst road in the city.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. With that, we will go to item number 3.
Item number 3 is an update regarding the 48-inch transmission line project in the Lake Fort Smith water treatment plant upgrade. Lance, assume the position here.
Good evening. For some of you that have been on the board for a while, you're going to see some information that you may have seen before. I felt that we had enough new directors on the board that it would be helpful to provide some additional information. The Lee Creek Treatment Plant was constructed in 1992. It has a maximum capacity for production of 23.5. Normally, we don't run it over 22. You don't want to run plants to their maximum all the time. It does have a hydrogenerator that does not work at this time. So that is something that we are working with FERC, and we will be bringing things in the budget that are related to that. 2016, I think. And that's why we're bringing stuff, as FERC is saying, we really want you to get that fixed to generate power. It produces, in 2024, Lee Creek produced 29% of the water produced and sold. And during this time of year, if there is not water going over the dam, we have a maximum drawdown, or a maximum we can take out of the lake, of 10 million gallons a day. So that's just some information on that. It does have a 48-inch transmission line. There is a theoretical pipe capacity of 45 million gallons per day. Our total pumping capacity, and this is because of the pumps that we have, is 23.5, which, if you think about that, matches what our actual capacity for producing water at that plant is. There is room for further expansion of both the dam at Lee Creek to allow more water drawdown during the year, as well as, if needed, secondary transmission lines. Lake Fort Smith is our primary treatment plant. It was constructed originally, began in 1936, or the early 30s, finished around 36. We did have a major upgrade in 63, and our final upgrade and renovation that we had finished in 2012. The plans were actually drafted in 2006 for that upgrade, and that was based on a 20-year demand projection in 2006. And that was right after the dam had finished being raised. So we raised the dam, and then we started in on the plant. Right now, the maximum sustainable capacity is 38 to 40 million gallons per day. And the reason I say sustainable is if we take our filters offline to backwash, we lose the production through that filter during that time frame. So we do lose some production during that time. Our transmission line pump capacity is 40 million gallons per day. That's the 27 and the 36. The reason there is an asterisk is when we turn the pumps on, so we have to pump to get that, we are actually exceeding the design pressure of both the 27 and 36-inch line. So we are stressing those lines to get 40 MGD through them. The nice thing is how Lake Fort Smith was built and where it's at is normally we can get about 30 million gallons to gravity feed. That means no electricity, no moving parts, very little maintenance. So that's actually a benefit to the city, whereas Lee Creek, every drop has to be pumped. So every drop has electricity associated with it, has maintenance of a pump associated with it. Lake Fort Smith, during the winter months, we're gravity feeding. We're not having to do that. So that keeps costs down. And 71% of the water that we produced for sale in 2024 was at Lake Fort Smith. One of the things we do need to discuss is the potential for upgrading Lake Fort Smith. We're going to be talking about the 48-inch transmission line. The plant is already hitting max capacity during the year. It was designed for, the last design was for about 20 years, and we're about there. We are looking at a higher potential regional growth and thus water demand. And there were two ways of looking at this. We could do it in two phases. One was a 15 million gallon a day increase, and one was the full build-out of 30. Those estimated numbers that I'm giving you on this slide basically are fairly good numbers. It just so happens right now Beaver Water District is expanding their plant, as is Central Arkansas Water. And depending on what you're looking at the high and low of what the estimate is for those million-gallon increases. The 27-inch line was constructed in 1935 and 1936. It does have some hydraulic issues and definite maintenance issues. Now, I will tell you that at the last meeting, someone got up and talked about the water loss study that we were going to do, and where was that? That water loss study through the 27-inch was completed, and we did that this year. And it came out to be that we lose about 1.7%, which, when you look at us reading all the meters, because we had to look at what the meter sales were to all of our contract users on that 27, that's well within the area of error, what's allowed for error on a meter. But we would say that 1 to 2% through a almost 100-year line is where we're at. And fixing those leaks are difficult. We did replace 6 miles in phase 1 with the new 48-inch transmission line. And the question is, what are we going to do as we bring the 48-inch, the rest of the 48-inch online? One of the things that we did not have the technology back when the phase 1 of the transmission line was done that we do now is you can actually slip line water pipe. Much like CIPP on a wastewater line, you can actually line that pipe. And you're looking at about $2 million per mile for slip lining a water pipe. That's going to be a lot cheaper than replacing that pipe in the long run. So what the plan is to leave the 27 there, and as the 48's built, then go back later and slip line both the 27 and the 36 to have about 100 years worth of life instead of constructing another 48-inch line that would follow the current path of the 36. So we're looking at ways to save money but provide better infrastructure as time goes on.
Did I miss it? Where's the 36?
The 36 is next.
Oh, thank you.
So no, you did not?
Thank you.
Sorry. Clicker's a little slow. There we go. So the 36 was constructed in the 50s and 60s. It follows a route that's similar. It does deviate a few places to avoid hydraulic issues. And it currently carries about 65% of the water from Lake Fort Smith. We are going to do a loss study on it this fall to see what our water loss is, but we expect it to be equal to or less than what the 27-inch is because the concrete pipe is better. So Lee Creek and Lake Fort Smith converge in Van Buren at a location. And then there is a 48-inch line that goes underneath the Arkansas River, and there is a 30-inch transmission line that is attached to the bottom of Midland Bridge. The theoretical combined capacity of both crossings is 65 million gallons per day. Now, I use theoretical because when we did the math, that's what it came out to be. But the fact is, these pipes are fairly old. So you end up losing conveyance due to friction. Additionally, we've talked about the pressure issues tonight. So you can put a lot of water through a pipe, but it can then blow the rest of your system apart because there's so much pressure. So we actually operate what comes through those are sitting around 120 PSI. Your standard water through, what comes into your house is sitting around 60, 70 PSI. So we're running about double that. Those are the only two places where water can come into Fort Smith. So here is a map of the transmission line project, all the phases that we currently have. There are 2 other phases that we do not have shown here because what those are interconnects. One would connect to the 48-inch Lee Creek transmission line to allow, so if something happened, we could push water that direction, as well as another interconnect into Van Buren. Those are not as vital as getting the main 48-inch line constructed. And you can see where we're at with that. I will tell you that we actually had a meeting today. Phase 3 is between 60 and 90% in the design phase. Phase 4 we'll talk about briefly, but we have not begun design on that, and there is a reason for that. Phase 5, administration has asked that I bring a few things on that because we really need to finalize the route on that, and we'll discuss that tonight. So this is designed for 100 years of useful life, and it will provide all of the water south of Zero Street. So from Zero Street south will come through that. Again, Phase 1 is completed. That was 6 miles. Phase 2 is currently under design. And when it's 95%, the reason it's 95% is that other 5% is the environmental permitting that we have to have for crossing streams, for anything that requires a permit has to go through that. And those permits are only good for a year. So we've basically got it designed to the point where once we're ready, once we have the funding for it, we do the final 5% and then bid it out. Phase 3, as I mentioned, is under design. That route is complete. Phase 4 will consist of 2 36-inch lines under the Arkansas River. We had talked about either doing 1 48-inch or 2 36. Doing the risk assessment, 2 36s are better because you have redundancy. If one goes down, you still have water coming through. You can make those repairs and then bring it back up. You can also take one line out to do maintenance while you keep water flowing and vice versa. 5, there are several points of contention on the route. Once completed, the 48-inch transmission line will be able to provide 48 million gallons per day, and that is gravity fed. All 48 million gallons would be gravity fed. And that's the maximum that you could get through gravity. And it would take approximately 67% of the water because we were looking at taking the 27-inch offline and having the rest of it supplied by the 36.
It's just have on isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it would.
Good.
And pump maintenance and things of that nature. This next slide is a little hard to see, but basically, unfortunately for those that have their back to it, I can't see the laser, but the black line is the Phase 2, Phase 3, and Phase 4. I will point out that there is a Phase 2A1. We do have congressionally directed spending dollars for that, and we'll talk about that, but that's about 3 miles worth of the pipe that we will be able to install. That will be $12 million from Congressman Womack, I believe it was, and $3 million that we have to have in match. So $15 million to build 3 miles.
Are these funds we can access every year, or at least apply for every year? That I don't think it's a one and done. I mean, I know it's pending approval, but it.
Yes, ma'am. So I will say, yes, we can, but it is up to the member as to whether or not they want to carry our request forward.
Right.
So I think that's where we engage the delegation as much as we can. Take them on a tour of the treatment plant, get their eyes and ears on it. And I think that's how we can go to them year after year after year and say, hey, we need this funding, and that's how we get it. Now, I will say it's not, there are limits to not only what they can submit, but the monetary amount that we can submit for. As Lance said, in FY25, there was an issue with the budget, and they had to basically do a continuing resolution, and part of that was all the FY25 earmarks that got approved they were taken out. So we were actually, we put in for $20 million. We were only awarded 8.5 of that 20 million that we submitted. So, and then for FY24,
what's that 8.5 going towards?
Do what?
What was the 8.5 going towards?
It was for the transmission line. We put in a $20 million request, and
so we got 12 plus 8.5.
We got $3 million for the galvanized lines.
Yes.
So we never got the 12?
Yes. I'm sorry, yes, because they took away that FY25, so we had to resubmit, but we went a different route because it's just how it worked out. So
we got 3.
Yes. But then we do have the 12.5 million or the 12 million from FY24. So
right.
So
yes,
15.
I knew we had that. So this is in addition to that.
So
I was thinking we had the 12 or 12.5 since the end of 23, or I know that's when we started talking about it.
We have the 12 million, and then we have the additional 3 million that we were awarded this year for FY26.
Okay.
So in total, 15 million.
But that 3 million is not for the transmission line. That is
Right, it's
for
for
the galvanized
galvanized
pipe,
pipes.
which helps us with both compliance with the revised lead and copper rule and some fire flow issues that we have in one area of town, as well as leaks. So
But we're going to try for 26. Well, we're going to keep trying, is what I'm...
Well, I think that's up to the board and what their priorities are. I mean, there are a lot. That's up to the board and what you all want to prioritize with the request that we submit. Just because we submit is not a guarantee that we are going to get. An example of that is this year for the consolidated 911 center, we submitted for $5 million, and Senator Bozeman didn't want to carry that through. So,
Okay.
but I think too that goes back to the relationship with the delegation too. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Lance, just before, so I'm tracking with you, on the Lake Fort Smith upgrade, that's not the transmission line now we're talking about here. This is going to be
Correct.
additional.
This is additional.
So the transmission line I've heard about, that 170 million?
We'll get into some pricing here in a bit on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's not counting the 180 million back at Lake Fort Smith.
Correct. So, if you got a pipe and you don't have the water to put in the pipe, you've got an empty pipe.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So it's kind of, and the reason, and this has been mentioned a couple of times to the board, but it's chicken or egg. If you build the plant and then you have to mothball it because you can't use it, you've got a lot of resources that are aging out and the infrastructure is never being used. So you want to have those kind of completed around the same time. I'll go ahead and continue if that's all right. Thanks, Chris. This is phase 5. The bottom line where it has the arrow that says Little Vashey, the creek at the bottom, that's easy for everybody else to say except for me. That's actually the direction that the transmission line will be going, will go south. We will have a line that goes up Frontier Road, and we'll also go to Painter Lane and up, but this one dark one that has phase 5 kind of pointed out, that has gone away. So here's kind of where we're at with each phase.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because I was in a Little Rock meeting on this. Jeff, are they going to allow us to not go along that road there? Is that or is that why that's removed then? Because I remember we talked to them about the idea.
I don't think that's it. I mean, you're talking more along up there on Frontier Lane where it goes around.
Yeah,
RDOT.
we were just talking about instead of this unnecessary jagged run up.
Right.
If they would let us
I think they are
have
willing.
frontage.
I think they are willing to do that. We haven't
Yes.
accomplished that with them yet, though.
Okay, thank you.
It goes around their facility out there near Barling. It goes around the back side of it instead of going along the front, along Frontier Road.
Yeah, I just wanted to see like if that's indeed, are they favorable because it's drawn to go behind it instead of in front of it? Thank you.
I believe at this point in time, this actually shows it going in front. Is that? Yeah, this is the front portion here. This actually is us coming up to where it would go in the front, correct? So Ben works also for the engineering firm that was helping us with this.
Which one's the laser? The red one. So he's talking about this portion right here, and RDOT is located at this point right here, and so we're actually actively going to be getting a survey on this area sometime in the next week or two, as RDOT has come back and said, initially for the last 7 years they've said no, 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 but in the last year they've changed and have come back and said, yes, we'll allow you to go that way.
Hurry up and do it. Thank you.
So to stay on the Frontier Lane, connect this alternate, Phase 5 alternate design?
Yes, right here.
Okay, all right.
And up.
Is it cost savings?
To go this up Frontier Road, yes.
Yeah, that's what we asked. Yeah.
That will be a huge cost savings, and it will be a lot easier to construct. Because right up here, if I'm not mistaken, is a cemetery. So we would be right up against a cemetery and other issues.
And also as it drops down and heads back to Frontier Road, there's actually a development there now.
Yeah. So. Okay. Okay. Hold on. There we go. So this is kind of where we're at with each phase. We've already talked a little bit about it. Part 2A, that will actually, we are hoping that goes out to bid the end of this year, first of next year. We're working with EPA, who actually holds the grant on that. The environmental work is pretty much done. We're submitting a work plan in the next couple of weeks, which is a requirement. And then once everything is good and they're happy with it, then we will send it out for bid.
You said the EPA grant?
EPA holds the money for this project. So the congressionally directed spending was then given to EPA for this grant.
So I know we'll be in D.C. in a month. Do we need to talk about that with our... when we meet with EPA?
I mean, we're on track where we need to be on this. So, yeah, this is how long it takes to do that, because we're also making sure that when we put out the bid documents, we have all the required federal language, such as BABA, Davis-Bacon, prevailing wage, NEPA. All of that is rolled in so that we're making sure we are crossing our I's and dotting our T's with that, and it just takes some extra time. 2B, which is the remaining 9.3 miles, needs funding. Phase 3, which is 8.9 miles, it again is under design. We're in between 60 and 90. We have all but 2 easements, I believe, done, if I remember right. So we're getting that. In fact, part of Phase 3 is actually under construction right now. We are putting in a casing. This is part of the requirement that RDOT had for I-49. It's a 100% reimbursable cost, so that RDOT's actually paying for our casing for that. 4 is the 2.1 miles that will be underneath the river, and that one gets a little tricky because we're going to actually have to bring on the contractor while we're doing the design. We're going to be dealing with the Corps of Engineers, the Department of Defense, the National Guard, and levee associations, because we have to bore underneath the levee, underneath the river, back up to the other side. And they really have said, we want your contractor here to be part of this design and part of the discussion. So if you go, for those of you that were here when we did the 2019 repair for the flood, and we did CMAR on a couple of the projects, this will be much like that, having the construction manager there with us. And then Phase 5 is approximately 4.2 miles, and we need to kind of finish up the route, get it established, and then fund it. Now, one of the issues that we have on the route, and this is really, I think, our last major issue, if I'm not mistaken, is an alignment with ArcBest. You'll see that there are several given. This light blue one, there are actually developments there underway right now. The yellow, there isn't. The pink gives us a very large challenge because that goes through some wetlands. So you're looking at environmental issues. This darker blue is really the best way to handle it. It is going to be the easiest to construct. In a moment, I'll show you the cost estimates. It'll be the least costly. And in future, it will be easier to maintain. What RDOT had, or not, sorry, not RDOT, ArcBest had proposed was placing it under the road and coming up and going this route. There's a lot of problems with that. Number one, if you've got a transmission line underneath a road, it's really hard to do maintenance on it without tearing the road up. When you look at the overall... Well,
that's good.
So, well, okay, let's try one hit. Okay, so when you look at it, the yellow and dark blue is about 4.9 million, whereas the green is 7.1 million. And I'm trying to deliver this as economically as possible. And I know Mr. Dingman said that he may have a few words to discuss on this, so I'll turn this section over to Mr. Dingman.
No, I'll just say if you go back to that other slide, Lance, it shows the map. You know, we have talked with ArcBest, and they are aware of this. Of course, they prefer, you know, if we choose another. I mean, because they ArcBest owns the property that's on the lighter colored on the, was it the west, and then they also own all that property that's on the east there of that dark blue line. And, you know, they have designs on developing that piece of property and perhaps offering it for sale. Whether they use it for ArcBest purposes or not, I think currently they're most likely going to develop it for some commercial use or something like that. Of course, and then they would much rather not have that line encumbered, you know, right through the middle or right along the property line there. However, you know, putting that line right along the property line does prevent any structures or anything on it, but it doesn't prevent things like parking lots and sidewalks and things like that that are typically involved on the edge of a development like that. And so, but just so you are aware, ArcBest has indicated, or at least the folks we've talked with, well, not an official company statement, that sort of thing, but at least our initial discussions, they would certainly like for us to consider another alternative. But the problem with that is, as Lance has shown, is that the other alternatives then become more and more expensive and harder to maintain and install in the first place.
Yes. Just about. So this is where these three lines pick up. Cool. Where these three lines pick up are where whichever route we go, ArcBest does. And looking at this, we actually ask for opinions and routes. This kind of orange-brown one is the one that we're going to go. We already own the property. Now, this isn't a final alignment. We need to go actually north of the pump station, but it will be the easiest to build because we already own the property. We don't have to get easements, and we're going to have the best operations where we tie in to the lines in Mazard near that pump station. So here's the estimated construction cost for each phase and what the total would be. And again, this is a range. It is not a solid dollar amount because construction fees change, and when we're looking at where we're at. Phase 4, I know it seems to be the shortest amount, but there's a lot of of permitting that will go into it, and the bore is not going to be cheap. Phase 3, you're looking about the same distance as what you're looking in 2B, but the difference is you don't have mountainous terrain. You're looking at basically open fields. It's going through the bottoms, so it's a lot easier to construct that. Phase 5, you're going to be in a more developed area, so there's a lot of mitigation that you take into effect there. So, in conclusion, the capacity upgrade, and I put for the full $30 million. Talking with an engineer today, he said right now the prices for doing construction on plants based on what they're seeing with Beaver Water as well as CAW are just nuts. They would have never thought it cost this much to upgrade, but it is, and they said they don't see that dropping. So I put that estimated cost, the transmission estimated cost, and if we're looking at the total water supply cost, which includes the plant and the transmission line, we're looking at between $328 to $585 million. And we are looking for funding, as Chris had discussed. We're looking at grants that are tied to the military as well as congressionally directed spending. They're going to, I mean, that's the $585 million question.
But you're not going to get all that through congressionally directed funds.
No,
right?
we would not.
Let's say you had $585 million right now. What would the time frame be to get all this done?
I'm looking at 6 to 8 years.
6 to 8 years,
and
fully funded. If it were fully funded,
and that's being conservative. Okay. 6 to 8 years. Could it be done quicker? The transmission line probably could be done in 5 to 6 years. That would be pushing it with phase 4, to be truthful with you.
5 to 6 years for the transmission line, and
that's pushing it. We saw where we designed and had the construction of Lake Fort Smith. Began in 2006. It ended in 2012. That was designed to end a construction. So if we had all the money, we could, again, being conservative, 6 to 8 years is a reasonable time frame.
Okay. And I think the original impetus for me asking about this was related to the prison and them wanting water and looking at, okay, what would that cost be in order to be able to do this? Because I mean, this is just to service Fort Smith and the growth of Fort Smith, with not an anticipation of a 3,000-bed prison. Would this serve a 3,000-bed prison?
It could, yes.
Without adding any additional capacity?
Well, that's again the capacity to the treatment plant. That would be the additional capacity there.
So that would be the 30 million gallons per day.
Because you're only looking at, I believe their estimates were 500 to 1 million gallons a day maximum.
Okay.
So if you're looking at adding 30 million gallons and being able to, if you think about that, that would bring our entire dry weather capacity up to anywhere from 60 to 80 million gallons a day that we could produce and transport.
Okay. So 6 to 8 years right now if you were fully funded.
If we were fully funded.
And are you fully funded?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just jump back real quick. Right to here.
Right.
We have 12 million and we have 3 million sitting there for the match.
Right.
We have 15 million, and that's just for the transmission line. We need funding for everything else.
So
the design is funding.
Right. So if you had it, or in terms of funding, what would funding? Let's say rates funded this, or would rates fund this, or would
you would have to bond
it out?
It would bond it out because rates alone, just to do pay-as-you-go cash,
wouldn't work.
Would be as insane as what we saw on the CD. I would have to get with our CFO. I've got some preliminary numbers, but I would rather have them fleshed out by Andy, who is very knowledgeable in these types of things.
I mean, I guess thought processes would be you'd bond it out, but you'd still have to have some kind of rate backing of some sort.
Yes, you would.
So you'd have a rate increase of some sort.
Yeah, because
or a sales tax increase.
We would do a large bond issue, but then we would have to finance the debt service of that every year with a rate probably.
Right.
And you brought up another way that it could also be funded, and I know nobody likes to talk about tax, but the original dam and the upgrade to the plant were funded by sales and use tax, and I believe it was 1%, and we paid that off very early. I don't remember how early, but
I think that that financing, of course, I think that financing was all done in 2012. I think that was all completed then, and so then it was reissued and refunded for additional projects.
Yeah.
So we're basically saying right now at this point, you've got it in here somewhere, is the total. I think I saw it. That
it's for
how much is unfunded?
How much is unfunded?
570 million.
No, it's
I mean, that's
not,
where my head's at.
It's not far from there.
Well, if it's max cost, it's 570.
Well, but we've got some funding.
Well, that's why I said if it's max cost, you take out the 15 million.
So
that
we're
drops 585.
Or
585 minus 15 gives us 570.
570. Okay. So 570. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
That would be maximum cost.
That's a lot. I mean, that's consent decree-esque.
Director Casavis. Christina?
The 2 36-inch lines boring through under the river, is the Corps going to approve that, the Corps of Engineers?
They should. I mean,
We're confident?
Yeah. I mean, we've already been in talks with them. That's why we know we have to have the construction manager on site and be ready to go during the design. I mean, we're going to have to bring in the construction manager when we start the design to sit down, because the Corps has to approve everything, and they need to have the faith that the construction manager is capable of doing this without undermining the levee and without having any impacts to the bottom of the river. And one of the things that we are looking at, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there is bedrock under the river, and we're wanting to kind of bore so that that pipe is laying very close to that bedrock because of the additional stability. So that puts it well below the 12 or even 16-foot channel that has been discussed in the past.
So my understanding when I'd spoken with Carl about this last year was that we had already paid for the design to come across the bridge and then backed out on that. Is that correct? And what was the reasoning for that?
Part of the reasoning was the engineering estimates from both RDOT and Burns and McDonald came in at $5 million. The person who won the design on the bridge and then the line was ancillary came in at well over that. So we just did not have the $12 million needed to attach it to the bridge at that time.
So it had to go at that time?
Yes.
And one other thing to kind of speak to that would just get us across the river portion of that 2.1 miles. And so we were still looking at, I can't remember what the amount was, like 1.8 miles worth of pipe. And so the cost on it just did not play out to what we were seeing compared to what the boring cost would be for an equivalent. And also there's some operation and safety of the line. If you're able to bore all the way from levee to the other side of the river, you're limiting on, because we'd have to have a high point in the middle of the river area, which would cause kind of a weak spot and a maintenance issue and so there's some of that is a decision made on safety and how the line's going to be operated as well, in addition to the money portion.
So if it doesn't go attached to the bridge, the only other option is to bore into the river? Or could it go on its own, not attached to the bridge?
No. Yeah, that was a one-time shot with RDOT. And so once that opportunity passed, then we don't have an option to come back because they had to...
There's no, building a bridge just for the water line?
I mean, I guess you could do that, but that would be more expensive, definitely.
That's more expensive than boring under the river?
Yes, yeah. Because you'd have to come back and do piles and build a support structure and everything else on top of it. in addition to just the pipe, and so the amount of material and labor on that would just be exponentially more than what just the pipe going underneath would be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Kemp and then Director Neil Martin.
Thank you for answering those questions, because I've had a couple companies speak caution to me that perhaps the Corps of Engineers is not going to support this idea of taking the 236-inch lines under the river. Is there a way to get a consensus from them? Because before the opportunity passes us, I mean, if I hear what I'm saying is the bridge thing moves on, and if inevitable that we're trying to be asked to supply water, say even just to Charleston, forget the idea of the future growth, at some point or another, and you have to go back to the bridge, I think we're going to want to know. We need to have that conversation sooner than later, and I think finding out a determination is the Corps of Engineers really cooperative as we hope they are.
Yeah. So our group out of Houston, and let's get one thing clear. The Corps of Engineers group that is in Little Rock, they don't do this. They kick this out to the Galveston group because they just don't have experience to even manage this type of review for this type of project. And so the Galveston group is the one out of the Corps of Engineers that will end up doing the reviews on these. We have a group that literally this is what they do day in and day out. And one of the other reasons why we didn't choose a single 48, one of the things you want to do in engineering is never be the first. You can send a 48-inch line that far, but it might be a world record, or at least a North American record, and you don't want to be that, at least when you're being conservative with engineering. And so they have shot 36-inch lines this distance, and that's not the concern. It's once you start getting bigger and you start limiting what companies can actually do the work as well. And so even with a 36-inch, you're limiting how many companies. I mean, you're probably not going to find somebody in Arkansas that's doing this. You'll find somebody in Texas. But you go down to the Galveston group, and the reason why they're so familiar with this work is because of all the oil and gas pipelines. They can't have their oil and gas lines punching through all their levees and everything else down there. And so they're constantly doing this type of work down there to be able to import and export oil through petroleum lines. And so they're familiar with this work.
Well, thank you for speaking to that. Lance, the question I had too was based right out of the water meter discussion we were talking about. How old are the water meters? My understanding is that when we supply the outside of town but before us communities with water, those are metered, right?
Yes.
We know exactly what they get.
And that's
how old are those meters?
I will have to go and look to see what each one is. Van Buren's is fairly new, and when I say fairly new, within the last, I think, 3 to 4 years. And they have had theirs tested. It is a turbine meter. They are putting one in that is going to be ultrasonic. But so what we did is we have the meter, a mag meter, which is very accurate, that leaves Lake Fort Smith. We diverted all the water to the 27-inch, and then we set up a meter at the end of the 27-inch to see what the water flow was. We actually sent crews up to manually read the meters, and they started at the plant with that reading and looked at the time frame at which it took to get to all the other meters that are tied into the 27 and get that back to Fort Smith to read the end meter. Then we did it on another day, and that's how we saw that. So with the fact that it's 1.7%,
I'm not even thinking about the pipe.
But
I'm more thinking about the billing side.
Well, but that's where I'm going. If we're seeing a 1.7% water loss, and we know that an accurate meter is plus or minus 1 to 1.5%, depending upon the age, that we're talking 0.2 off. It doesn't mean that we don't need to look at that and change those meters out and make sure that they are accurate. The direct retail customers that we have that come off of that, those have been changed out in the last 5 to 10 years. So those are good. I agree that our commercial our wholesale customers, we need to look at those meters and the age of them.
Well, that was just, on a way to gain a little revenue. It won't solve the world's problems. And I think the concern, too, I have about these numbers, and my only final comment would be, is depreciation, or not depreciation, inflation factored into these prices. I mean, if it's 6 to 8 years and then we get to it, is it not
No.
585 and it's more than that?
No, this is kind of, that's why there's kind of a range right now. We tried to do a little bit of that, but the aspect that we had in 2019, I think we were looking at, and this was April of 2019, the engineer estimate to complete the project was sitting at about 75 to 80 million, and now we're looking at 148 to 225 million. So COVID, inflation, all of that does have the ability to have an impact. Now, we have seen some cost of materials decrease, but for how long that will track is the question. And one other thing on this range, the range also takes into account that if we're using federal funding for it or state supplied funding, it is a more expensive project because we do have the BABA, the prevailing wage, Davis-Bacon, all these federal requirements that we have to adhere to, as opposed to if it is bond funded, we don't have to follow as many stringent federal guidelines that drive the price up.
Yeah, I hope that we can find and continue this discussion, because I hate to see 585 become 700 million. Thank you.
Director Neal.
So I guess the last question I have is, let's say the board, you need funding. I'm assuming you would come to the board for that. What would that look like? When would we hear something like that?
I need funding. I'm
being serious.
I am too. I mean, we're to the point where we are maxing out several days during the summer months. We are maxing out our plant and the conveyance. And one thing I know Director Settle would probably have asked is, what are we supplying on an average day to our contract water users?
Right.
Average day, and this is 24 numbers. This isn't, these are actual numbers of what we supplied, was 10.05 million gallons a day is the average day.
To outside customers.
To outside customers, to our wholesale customers.
That's a quarter.
So that is a quarter of what Lake Fort Smith can produce as a maximum. It's 1/5 of what
20%
of that. The issue is that is a daily average. If you look at peak times, we hit 50 MGD. Earlier this month, for 2 weeks, we were putting out 48 to 50 MGD. In fact, at one point, we actually were draining our clear wells at the plants because we were putting out 51 due to the demand of everybody. Yeah. And that was while we were trying to fill our tanks as well to get back up.
The thing to think about is the folks just had a water rate increase. They had a sewer rate increase. Mm-hmm. And this is another consent decree, which is, in terms of costs, we're talking $30 million on a 1 cent sales tax plus rates. Looking at this is pretty massive, that you can't just come to me next board meeting and say, hey, let's have a 1 cent sales tax and a 3.5% rate increase. It just won't work.
And that's why I'm grateful that you asked to have this discussion.
Right. This is massive. And
when you all go to Washington, why don't you corner our senators and talk about
and tell them to give me $600 million?
We do every time. We advocate for money for these projects. Every time I've been there, I'm
thankful for $12 million. I'm thankful for $5 million. That's awesome. But
a lot of times we have to put a 20% match, and we don't always have the money to do that.
Or invite them down here and say, let's spin it down and show them around our problem.
I'm great. So Womack gave away $100 million for his entire district last year. Bentonville, Springdale, Rogers, Fort Smith, Greenwood. That's a far cry from what we need here.
I think it's time that the state actually has a real conversation with at least administration. But I mean, if we're talking about 1 million gallons of water being added to our demand, and you see this conversation here, it's money talks. You know, where's the dollars here? You know, and I think also if we talk about bonding us, I mean, I know we've talked about outside rates and users, you know, that there's a limit of what we can do there. But I'm just thinking, if we start talking about a bond conversation, I mean, it's not just beneficial to us. I mean, they need us. I mean,
yeah,
otherwise.
So if we did it on revenue, their rates would go up as well. Okay. The same percentage as what in town would be, because it would be, they are getting a benefit from it. So yeah, that would be.
Our revenue should be increasing, correct?
Why don't we?
That kind of usage.
We'll see what we get on revenue at the end of the year. My concern is, you know, again, we have to have a debt service coverage that would cover this type of, and you're not going to get it from what we just raised.
Even with new customers.
Even with new customers.
New development.
Yeah.
What we may do is take a study session and study in depth what we need and when we need it, and then do an honest assessment on the things that we can do to get there, because the problem is not going away. No. It's going to only get worse. Director Christina Casavas, you recognize.
So, Lance, how much would it have cost to take the line across the bridge while it was being constructed?
They were looking at 11 to 12 million down. Now, I will state that they had 2 bids for the bridge.
But we had Bozeman's $12 million, didn't we?
But it's specifically earmarked for that portion of the transmission line. You can't say, well, we're going to take it and put it over here for this. It was specifically earmarked, and it has to be used for that.
But we put the request into Bozeman, right? So why didn't we put that request in for this if we knew that was coming up?
When we put that request in, we did not know that that was coming up, and we also didn't know the price.
Okay.
There were actually 2 bids for that water line. One was $5 million, was right on what RDOT and Burns and Mac both said, but their bridge was higher. What RDOT looked at was the price of the bridge, and they really didn't care what the price of the transmission line was. And the transmission line for the second one, the bridge was less, but the transmission line was over double what the other bid was. So, you know.
I just think under the premise of it's never too late for a good idea, though. I mean, are we sure they shouldn't?
Excuse me, I still have the floor. Yeah. We could have come up with $5 million, right?
$5 million would have been a stretch, but yes. But the $12 million that it was going to take is where we just did not have that.
Okay.
Well, I think it proved out that we weren't. I mean, the idea of putting it on the bridge is, can we save some money by putting this water line on the bridge? And I think that proved out that that was not going to happen. And even as we looked at the alternatives of the 148-inch or the 236 inches under the bridge, if we bore both of those lines under the bridge, we don't have ongoing maintenance issues as much as we would have on the bridge, because that is a constant concern also. If we have a 30-inch water line suspended in the air on a bridge, there's constant maintenance required for that. Plus the fact that they're building the bridge right now. They're starting it right now. We wouldn't have water to it for probably 5 years from now, because that's how long it will take to get the rest of the pipe down to it if we started right now. And so that was a problem also. And so by letting them go ahead with their bridge project and then still planning on doing the 236-inch bores, we can do that on our own schedule when we have the dollars for it, instead of building a section of water line that hangs on a bridge for 5 years before we can put a drop of water into it.
But there wasn't, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One other thing, and this is not something that has been brought up a lot, but the pipe on the bridge, even though it was going to be a 36-inch pipe, hydraulically, the amount of water it could convey was going to be significantly less than what we can convey under the river. And kind of trying to speak engineering terms here, what was happening is we were going to have to bring it up and do a 90-degree turn on it. And so whenever we do that design on that, one of the things we're always concerned about is surge pressures with if a pump kicks on or if a pump kicks off. And the best way to kind of think about this is if you're in an old house and you turn off the faucet real quick and you hear those pipes start doing this number, well, that's the concern that we would have with the same pipe on the bridge itself. And so with that, one of the components that we were working on was actually limiting the flow on it so that we would not have those surge pressures. I mean, we had concerns, some of the design on it was if we had a bad surge pressure hit and just a break in a certain place, we could potentially blow part of the pipe through the deck of the bridge. I mean, it was that type of concern that we were having. And so with that, we had to lower the amount, and I think we were roughly sitting, if I remember correctly, about half the amount of flow that we could actually get through the pipe on the bridge. And so some of this, from an engineering standpoint, was a little bit of trying to hammer a square peg into a round hole because we thought we were going to get some cost savings out of it, which unfortunately turned out to be not correct from that standpoint.
Right, and the other part of that is even if we put the 36-inch line on the bridge, we still would need to bore a 36-inch line under the bridge so that we could carry all of the water that's coming down from the 48, split it to the two different avenues, and then marry it back up on the other side, which we'll do with the 236s as they are. But that was going to be a problem as well, and so for all of those issues, there are a lot of good reasons to put both of our lines under the river instead of having one of them go on the bridge.
Correct. Yeah, and just for keep in the back of your mind, we did ask to put a 48 on the bridge, and RDOT came back very quickly and said, absolutely not, too much weight. Because that was one of the considerations they were looking at, is how much weight was getting added to the bridge by the water, because water weighs a lot, and especially when you add the steel pipe, and they're going to have to put a catwalk on there, and it was just a lot of additional work for them as well. It wasn't just a water line, it was a catwalk, it was the additional weight, the additional girders, how thick they were going to have to make them for the bridge itself. And so,
and when we looked at the total overall cost of building the pipe on the bridge and doing the 36-inch bore, it was significantly more cost than just doing the 236, and it was by a 25% more or more than that it would be much more efficient to just put the two lines under the river.
And since
how many companies are there that can bore under a river? I imagine this is highly technical, and there's not a lot of people that can do something like this.
And I know it's a limited field. I don't know, because I mean, as you get to the bigger pipelines, this is not something I do. I'm relying on another technical guy down in Houston that does this work, but I do know that the field is limited. And one of the things we were looking at is, since we were already going to have to do another 36 under the river, you're going to get some quantity of scale by running. They're already going to be set up. They're already going to have the equipment here, so you don't have to pay the mobilization and all that other payment that you would have to have just to get the contractor set up to go ahead and install the second 36-inch line. And so the hope is that, that's going to be a cheaper approach, just due to, since we're already having to do it, let's just do two of them at that point.
I mean, how bad are our problems that we need a $600 million fix? I feel like...
I'll let Lance.
Well, I'll speak to that some too. I mean, one of Lance's slides showed that section of near Midland, near Van Buren, where we have all of the water that comes into Fort Smith comes in two pipes right now. One of them's on the Midland Bridge, one of them's under the Arkansas River. But that is all the water that comes into Fort Smith and then gets distributed throughout the town and to all of our wholesale customers to the south. Those pipes are, does it say how old they are?
Well, 1950s was the 48-inch, and the the 30-inch on the bottom of Midland Bridge was 1967.
So that is an issue in and of itself, and you're limited as to what we can push across there. I mean, not necessarily because of these, but also because of the pressure implications when the water gets into town. And so the part of the $600 million fix is to add an entry point of water on the southeast portion of town to start filling back into the town from that direction, and to add that redundancy. I mean, it is a long-term planning benefit to have more than one point of entry for the water.
So, we've got aging infrastructure, we've got water meters that need replaced, we've got the consent decree, we've got the day-to-day operations. Now we're looking at this. I mean, this is a lot for one person to handle. I mean, right? I mean, that's a lot on you, Lance.
Well, and I appreciate that. I don't do it alone. I do have deputies that work on this. So I actually had two of my deputies in the briefing this morning that we had on this. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into this planning, and I've kind of been doing it for 6 years now, and kind of gotten used to the stress of it. But there is a lot on, like you said, there are the meters, but I have another deputy that deals with that, Kenny Hall, who has people that report up to him. The consent decree, that has been more of my focus. I've let Jimmy Johnson really focus more on the transmission line over the last couple of years, because as acting city administrator Dingman will tell you, getting a favorable negotiated settlement and agreement on the consent decree, I believe, has been one of the main focuses that the board has had. So working with my contacts in Little Rock, as well as in the federal government, making sure that we're providing them the information they need to help us and work collaboratively, has been really more of my focus, and I'm more in a directive and coordinative role on those other items.
I mean, really, our progress with the consent decree is what informs our ability to do any other project.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
And Mayor, I don't have a question, but I do want to speak real quick to the funding component, because that's been, obviously that has been asked. So from a federal perspective right now, the administration has a different take on grant funding. And any municipality throughout America could tell you right now that it is bone dry when it comes to finding funding. Now, will that change? Yes. I believe that will change, because with every administration, you have new priorities, you have new goals and objectives, and I think you're going to start to see some funding programs come down the pipeline through the various agencies. I think two great things that we have in our back pocket, four, is one, we have Ebbing Air National Guard Base. Two, we have Fort Chaffee. Three, we serve rural municipalities. And number four, one of those municipalities crosses a state jurisdictional line. All those things combined opens us up to some funding. It's just a matter of finding that. Speaking of the Ebbing, for example, right now we are doing the Mission Installation Resilience Study. We have contractors who are coming in studying everything as to how we can make the base more resilient. We will then be able to take that report to the DoD and other agencies and say, hey, this contractor did this work. This is mission critical for the security and defense of the United States, and what can be available. Now, the sources of the fund, the sources of this funding, I will have to let our contractors speak to, because they are experts in this. They've done this before, and they've done this with municipalities throughout the United States. So there are things coming down the pipeline. I think from a innovation perspective, we do have a real opportunity to not only for our congressional delegation to lead, but to take to the Trump Vance administration. The administration is looking for innovation, and when it rural grants, for example. So considering that we serve rural municipalities, one problem that we ran into is there's a lot of money out there, or there's a limited amount of money out there right now for municipalities that are rural, that have a small population. There is money galore for that infrastructure, for their plants, and Lance can attest to that. I think one thing that we need to approach and bridge and be innovative in is how can we, if we have these 13, 14 other municipalities that are rural, how can we go to the administration and say, hey, we are not the only municipality that's like this in America. Every municipality throughout the United States is facing the same problems we are when it comes to funding their water and wastewater infrastructure. So I really think that we can be, I don't want to say a test pilot, but if we can come up with some solutions, say, hey, there is this federal funding that we know is typically only awarded to rural municipalities, but we believe we should be eligible for that money because if we serve them, then we should. I think also when it comes to the jurisdictional lines, the government is always looking for partnerships. And I think if we could come up with if there's a project that we can find that would you could tie to economic development, that would maybe cross into Oklahoma, lead to an opportunity zone, something like that. I think those are other ways that we can help fund this transmission line and help fund this treatment plant. So it's not that there isn't stuff out there. There is. It's limited. We are in the process of doing studies in order to take that to funding agencies and see what can come from that. So
you mentioned the DOD. Who here has a relationship with the DOD to be able to do that? Because largely with the FMS project, we're pretty hands-off. And I know we talked about at our strategic planning session having a military liaison for the city, and I think that's a good idea because like you just said, we can use that for additional funding opportunities, but largely the board has no involvement in this project. So who could go to the DOD? Would that be Jeff? Would that be, do you have a relationship? I mean, is that a relationship we've tried to build?
We have Taryn Judd with the Roosevelt Group. Roosevelt Group, he contracts with us and he contracts with the chamber as well for really anything FMS related. They focus on those types of relationships. So
have we talked to him about? Was it he or she? I couldn't.
Taryn Judd, yes, and we have an established relationship. They're essentially a lobbyist firm,
right?
That are working on our behalf.
Who have we met with when we've been up there? Who was that individual?
That was a different group. That was a different group. The Roosevelt Group we've just worked within the last year. Okay. They have more direct contact with Department of Defense specifically. Okay. And so
they can advocate for us.
So
will we be meeting with them when we're there?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And I'd also say too, we are in contact with the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. That's one of the agencies I mentioned earlier that could maybe possibly go to fund some of the projects. As it's related to base. That's what this mission installation resilience study is being funded through, the noise mitigation grant that we got for the schools. So they can hopefully lead us to maybe some other contacts.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And I'd say too, this goes back also to the congressional delegation and leveraging the contacts that they have. Senator Cotton is the chairman of the Intel Committee. He's also a former Army man, so he has very good contacts within the DoD. Senator Bozeman is on the Milcon subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, and Congressman Womack, he is on the Appropriations Committee right now. He's the THUD chair. I know that there may be some possibility of him transitioning to another chairman and chairmanship getting a different gavel. So I think all those things combined, we just have to leverage their representation in D.C.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure you looked at the preliminary agenda. With that,
I will say one last thing. City offices will be closed on Monday, Labor Day.
Okay.
Thank you for tonight.
Second.